Today is a big day for me because I'm at home, surrounded by walls full of memories. Jack is here too, looking so proud and happy. He's exploring the rooms with excitement, and I can't help but feel his energy rubbing off on me. We're in the main part of my family's house, the place where my dad's dreams came true. My dad worked really hard to make this place amazing, and now it's worth a whopping $100 million. It's like his legacy, something he left behind for me when he passed away. Now, without my dad by my side, my husband wants a piece of our family's legacy. He insists that what used to be mine alone should now belong to both of us. But I know better. I have proof. Papers with my name, Sarah, as the rightful owner. At 42, I work in the digital world, thanks to my job at an online bank. This career wasn't just a whim, it was shaped by the values my parents taught me about money management. They showed me how important it is to be responsible with finances, lessons I still carry with me today. Growing up with money, my parents taught me to respect it and not take it for granted. Despite our wealth, they made sure I didn't grow up spoiled. My allowance was just like everyone else's, and we didn't eat fancy meals all the time. I went to a regular public school, not some fancy private one. But somehow, rumors about us being super rich spread anyway. People thought my life was all about luxury and fun because of our big house and money. Sarah, with your huge house and all your money, life must be easy, right? You must have all the cool gadgets and games. Can we come over and play? People often asked me these questions, thinking I had everything. But the truth was, my life wasn't as extravagant as they thought. I didn't have the newest toys or gaming consoles, but people still assumed I did. Sometimes it felt like everyone just wanted to be my friend because of my family's money. Sarah, you're rich, right? Can you lend me some money? People asking for money always made me uneasy. It felt like I didn't understand the values my parents taught me. Then, I got into a tough spot when I accidentally broke Maria's gaming console. I didn't have any money at that moment, which made things even worse. Around the same time, Julie and I became classmates. She asked if I had told my parents about the accident, but I was too scared of disappointing them to say anything. I can't tell them. They might get mad. That's why I'm asking you, Sarah, she confessed. Saying no felt awful, especially since I didn't want things to be awkward at school. But my parents were clear about not lending money, so I had to apologize to Julie and explain that I couldn't help. After I couldn't help Julie, she ended up crying. And soon rumors started flying around. People accused me of not helping a friend in need, even though my family was well off. I tried to explain that I didn't have any money to spare, but it didn't seem to matter. Then, Maria said something that really hurt. She suggested that I cared more about money than friendship. Things got worse when Maria and Julie started spreading lies, saying I owed them money and refused to pay for the broken console. The school found out the truth eventually and scolded Maria and Julie. But instead of stopping, the rumors got worse and even reached my parents. My dad decided to deal with it and organized a meeting with their families. Even though they said sorry, I decided to stay away from Maria and Julie after that. I still had to deal with their looks and whispers, but at least there were no more direct confrontations. During dinner that night, my dad shared advice that stuck with me for years. He said it's important to stand by your decisions, especially when it comes to money. Sarah, it's okay to say no, he said with a smile. You don't have to tell anyone about your finances. If someone keeps asking, just say you'll have to check with your parents, even if you know you can't lend money. This lesson about handling money matters gracefully and firmly became really important to me. As I grew up, I became more careful about who I let into my life, focusing on friendships based on character, not money. After university, I made sure to keep my work and personal life separate, avoiding any financial complications. This whole experience taught me the importance of setting boundaries in both friendships and finances, and it's shaped who I am today. When I was 35, I met Jack through a friend, and despite him being a bit younger, his genuine personality quickly won me over. We started casually dating, and before long, it turned into something serious. 2 years later, we had a beautiful wedding, which made my parents really happy. After we'd been married for about a month, my dad suggested that Jack come over to our house. I trusted Jack, but I was worried that he might accidentally reveal some private family stuff because he loves to talk. Still, after a month of marriage, I felt ready to let him in on everything about my family. So I invited him to visit my parents' house. Jack was amazed when he saw my family's house. His surprise was obvious, showing that he hadn't realized how well off my family was. Even though the visit went well, Jack couldn't stop asking about our money on the way home. I didn't know much about our finances myself, so his questions made me feel uneasy. A few months after we got married, my mom called to tell me that my dad was in the hospital. It was a shock, especially since I didn't know he was having health problems. Thinking back to our last visit, I remembered how he didn't seem well, and now I felt really worried and guilty. When I went to the hospital with my mom that Saturday, my dad tried to stay cheerful, but we could tell he was feeling down. He apologized for what he saw as a burden to us, showing his gentle nature. Then the doctors told us he had advanced pancreatic cancer, and it had spread too much for surgery. It was like a punch to the gut. We couldn't believe someone as health-conscious as my dad could get so sick. After the diagnosis, my dad stayed strong. He just wanted us to be happy, which made us all tear up. I wanted to spend every moment with him, but hospital rules meant only close family could visit. He wished for our friends to be around to make happy memories at home, which reminded us of the life he wanted for us. So I promised to keep our home full of joy, even after he was gone. Keeping that promise became really important to me. I decided to renovate our family home, something to focus on during such a tough time. Jack, always caring, worried about how much I was doing for my dad, not realizing the other stuff I was dealing with, like our family's estate issues that I hadn't told him about. When Jack asked about my dad's health, I finally opened up to him about everything we were going through. It was a relief to have the support while juggling work, hospital visits, and all the emotions. However, things got tense when Jack started asking about my dad's money and the family estate. He even suggested getting legal advice, just in case something happened to my mom too. It brought up painful memories for me. My dad had a lawyer he trusted, but Jack's insistence on being cautious with money started causing problems between us. A few months later, my dad passed away after bravely battling his illness. Then, the discussions about inheritance started within the family. I ended up getting a big house worth $5.5 million. But Jack's growing interest in the inheritance, despite me trying to keep him out of it, made things even harder. He was excited about moving into the mansion and kept asking about financial stuff, which caught me off guard. I later found out he'd been talking to my cousin at the funeral, who mentioned how the house would be a waste if it stayed empty. That just made things more complicated. Despite my attempts to explain to Jack that the inheritance wasn't something we shared, he didn't seem to listen. Our relationship started getting more hostile because of it. Even though he was there at my dad's funeral, Jack didn't help out with the memorial services or the legal stuff that followed. As things started to settle down and life went on, Jack dropped a bombshell. He said he changed the ownership of my family home to his name, and he had legal papers to prove it. I was shocked and hurt. Not only did he break my trust, but it also showed a huge lack of respect for our relationship and the boundaries we had. Dealing with inheritance issues brought up bigger problems in our marriage. We had to rethink what we valued, how much we trusted each other, and where our relationship was headed. When Jack told me he changed the ownership of our family home without telling me, I was shocked and hurt. He said he was tired of our marriage and suggested we live together as roommates in the house, with him not giving me much financial support. He even threatened divorce if I didn't agree, which was a lot to take in on top of everything else. I begged him to think about what he was doing and why he made such a big decision without talking to me. He said he'd talked to a lawyer about changing the ownership without my permission. Things got so bad that divorce seemed like the only way out. I was heartbroken and lost, feeling like I had to distance myself from the home and life I'd shared with Jack. I couldn't understand why he'd do something like this, and it felt like money had changed and for the worse. The next day, Jack demanded the house keys, saying the house was his now. This just made things worse. He tried to get into the house, but security stopped him. I showed them the real ownership papers, proving the house was mine because of my dad. Seeing the proof, Jack was shocked. He trusted a guy named Jerry to help him with legal stuff, and Jerry had lied to him. Jack had even given Jerry $360,000 to change the ownership, but it turned out to be a scam. Jack was really upset. He kept trying to call Jerry, but Jerry wouldn't answer. Jack was mad at him for tricking him and taking his money. Then he turned his anger on me, saying I spent too much money on things he thought were unnecessary. He even questioned if I understood how inheritance stuff worked. Even though Jack tried to fix things and suggested we give our marriage another chance, the trust between us was too broken. I asked the security guard to help him leave, closing a painful chapter of my life. In the months that followed, I had time to think about everything that happened. It made me realize how important trust and honesty are in a relationship. What happened with Jack, all the lies and betrayal, taught me to be careful not to let money cloud my judgment. During my dad's first memorial service at our family temple, Jack showed up unexpectedly. Since our divorce, things hadn't been going well for him. He didn't have a job, he had money problems, and it seemed like the people he trusted had let him down. He looked really sad and lost, standing there in contrast to the solemn occasion. As he tearfully tried to apologize, his actions unintentionally disrupted the memorial, causing a commotion among my relatives. Despite his emotional distress, I had to ask him to leave, and security had to step in to make sure it happened. It was a difficult moment, especially during such a solemn occasion, leaving me with mixed emotions, but also a strong desire to move forward and leave our past behind. I decided it was time to leave my parents' home, something I'd been planning for a while. I found a new place to live, cutting ties with Jack for good. Meanwhile, Jack kept coming to the family property, which we had turned into a rental villa. My mom and I ran the villa together, turning it into a happy place for many people to visit and enjoy. On his side, Jack seemed to be trying to make positive changes. He got a new job and was really focused on starting over. Turning our family home into a rental villa not only honored my dad's vision, but also created a welcoming place for guests from all walks of life. The villa, known for its stunning views and beautiful garden, became really popular. We hosted all sorts of events there, from small weddings to big family parties. Working on it with my mom brought us even closer and made us really happy. As the villa became more successful, we decided to add more stuff to make it even better. We put in a swimming pool, a cozy outdoor lounge, and a fun area for kids to play. We were really committed to making sure our guests had an amazing time, and it paid off. The villa became a top spot for people looking for a peaceful getaway and unforgettable experiences. This whole project wasn't just about making money. It was about making my dad's dream come true and creating special memories for our guests. Taking care of the villa's garden filled me with a deep sense of happiness. Seeing our family home turned into a place where people could come together, have fun, and make lasting memories made me really proud. I could almost imagine my father looking down with pride at what we had accomplished, bringing his dream to life. This venture not only fulfilled his vision but also gave us financial stability and a sense of freedom. Along the way, I learned important lessons about trust, money, and the strength needed to forge my own path, separate from the challenges of the past. In this journey of self-discovery, I discovered that facing difficulties can actually make you stronger and more determined. I heard news about Jack from friends, and it seemed like he was turning his life around, finding a meaningful job and learning from his mistakes. Seeing his progress gave me a sense of peace, knowing that both of us were moving forward and growing. My father's dream became a driving force for growth, not just for me and my mom, but for everyone who visited the rental villa. It became a place of joy and celebration, a sanctuary where people could create lasting memories. The success of the villa is a testament to my father's vision, reminding us of the values of resilience and hard work. Through this venture, we've created more than just a place to stay. It's a source of happiness, a place for making memories, and proof that dreaming big and putting in the effort can lead to incredible things.
It was an ordinary holiday morning, the kind where the sun seemed to promise a day of leisure and laughter. I was in the hallway, coaxing my son Aaron to hurry up for his baseball game, when the world as I knew it shattered. Opening the door, I froze. There, like a ghost from a past life, stood Mark, my husband who had vanished without a trace 3 years ago. "This is our home," he declared, his voice a strange mixture of assertiveness and uncertainty. But before I could process his presence, another figure emerged from behind him. Clara, my sister-in-law. The sight of her stirred a nest of vipers in my stomach. "We're going to take custody of Aaron," Clara said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweetness I remembered all too well. How many times had I speculated about this very scenario? Mark and Clara disappearing around the same time couldn't just be a coincidence. But with the whirlwind of daily life and limited resources, I had never been able to dig deeper into their disappearance. Lost in these thoughts, I barely registered Aaron's voice behind me. "Hey, Mom, who are you talking to?" My heart clenched. He stood there, my brave little boy, unaware of the storm about to break. Clara turned her predatory smile towards him. "Oh, it's nice to finally meet you. You're Aaron, right? I've wanted to meet you for so long." Her voice churned my insides. That same voice that had charmed everyone around her, masking the manipulative, cruel nature I knew too well. The voice I had hoped to never hear again. Aaron, confused, glanced at me and then back at them. "Dad, what are you doing here? And who is she?" He moved closer to me, instinctively sensing the tension. Mark and Clara stood there, gaping like fish out of water, clearly not expecting this confrontation. Before they could recover, Aaron continued, his voice tinged with anger. "We're about to leave. Move." It was then that Mark and Clara noticed something behind me, their faces drained of color. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Standing there was my daughter, Elise, cradled in Aaron's arms. Mark's eyes widened in shock, his gaze flicking between Elise and me. "Mark, Clara," I started, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. "3 years ago, you left without a word. I was left alone to pick up the pieces, to raise Aaron, and to face an unexpected pregnancy." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. Clara's eyes narrowed, but I continued. "I'm not the same person you abandoned. I fought hard to build a life for my children and me, and I won't let you waltz back in to destroy that." Their faces were a picture of shock, disbelief, and, for a fleeting moment, guilt. But it was too late for guilt. The wounds they had inflicted ran too deep. "Please leave," I said firmly. "You have no right to be here." Mark opened his mouth, likely to spout some excuse or plea, but I didn't want to hear it. I closed the door on them, on the past they represented. Turning back to my children, I saw Aaron looking at me with newfound respect and Elise gurgling, blissfully unaware of the storm that had just passed. I took a deep breath, steadying my racing heart. This was just the beginning. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to fight for my family's future. The days following Mark and Clara's unwelcome visit were a whirlwind of emotions and memories, a tidal wave that threatened to drown me. I found myself revisiting the dark days after Mark's disappearance, the sleepless nights filled with worry, and the countless hours I spent questioning what I could have done differently. Aaron had struggled the most. Once a cheerful and outgoing boy, he became sullen and withdrawn, his bright eyes dimming. I remembered the countless dinners he pushed away, the school events he begged me to skip, and the cold, distant looks that replaced his warm smiles. It tore at my heart, but I couldn't find a way to reach him. As I brooded over these memories, Elise's innocent laughter echoed through the house, a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. She was my unexpected blessing, a light in the darkness of Mark's betrayal. Her birth had been a turning point for me, a moment of profound strength and vulnerability. One evening, as I tucked Aaron into bed, he turned to me with serious eyes. "Mom, why did Dad leave us? Did we do something wrong?" His question hit me like a physical blow. "No, honey, you did nothing wrong. Sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense, and it's not because of anything you did." "But why did he come back? And with Aunt Clara?" The confusion in his voice was heartbreaking. I sighed, searching for the right words. "I don't know why they came back, but I do know that we are a family, you, me, and Elise. We'll get through this together." He nodded slowly, his young face etched with worries no child should bear. "I trust you, Mom. I just wish things were like before." I kissed his forehead, whispering, "I know, my love. I wish that too." The next day, I was jolted out of my reverie by a call from my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. "Lauren, we need to discuss your legal options. Mark and Clara's claim is baseless, but we should prepare a case." I listened, my mind racing. This was my chance to fight back, to ensure that Mark and Clara couldn't hurt us anymore. "Let's do it," I said firmly. "I want to protect my children, and I won't let them be used as pawns in whatever game Mark and Clara are playing." Mr. Thompson's voice was reassuring. "You're making the right decision. I'll start preparing the documents. We'll show them that they can't just walk over you." As I hung up, a sense of determination settled over me. Mark and Clara had underestimated me, thinking I would crumble under their pressure. But they were wrong. I was stronger now, tempered by the trials I had faced. I looked at Aaron, playing with Elise, and knew that I would do whatever it took to keep them safe. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about justice for my children and me. Mark and Clara had awakened a fierce protectiveness in me, and I was ready to fight back with everything I had. As the days turned into weeks, my resolve hardened like steel. I was prepared for the legal battle ahead, but nothing could have prepared me for the emotional warfare that ensued. Mark and Clara, like vultures circling their prey, began their campaign to wear me down. One afternoon, as I collected Aaron from school, I found them waiting, their presence a dark cloud on the sunny day. Clara's voice was sickeningly sweet as she called out to Aaron, "Hi, sweetie, we've missed you so much." Aaron clung to my hand, his body tense. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mark stepped forward, his expression one of feigned concern. "We just wanted to see you, son. We're your family too, you know." I felt a surge of anger. "You lost the right to call yourself his family when you abandoned him," I snapped, pulling Aaron closer. Clara's eyes narrowed, her facade slipping. "Lauren, you can't keep him from us. We have rights." "Rights? You have no rights here," I retorted, my voice cold. "You both made your choice 3 years ago. Now live with it." Mark's face twisted in anger. "You think you're so perfect, Lauren? You're just a bitter woman who couldn't keep her husband happy." I could feel Aaron's grip tighten on my hand, his small body shaking. "Let's go, Aaron," I said, turning to leave. But Clara wasn't done. "You'll regret this, Lauren. We'll get what we want. We always do." Their threats echoed in my ears as we walked away, but I wouldn't let them see my fear. I had to be strong for Aaron and Elise. That night as I lay in bed, their words haunted me. The idea of losing Aaron to those two was unbearable. I couldn't let it happen. I had to be smarter, stronger. The next day I met with Mr. Thompson, my determination like a shield around me. "I want full custody of Aaron, and I want Mark and Clara to have no visitation rights," I said firmly. Mr. Thompson nodded. "It's going to be a tough battle, but I believe we can win this. You're a good mother, Lauren. The court will see that." As the legal preparations progressed, I found an unexpected ally in my own home, Aaron. One evening he came to me, his young face set in a serious expression. "Mom, I want to tell the judge that I want to stay with you. Dad and Aunt Clara, they're not my family. Not really." Tears welled in my eyes as I hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Aaron. That means more to me than you'll ever know." The day of the court hearing arrived like a storm on the horizon. I walked into the courtroom with Aaron by my side, ready to fight for our future. As the proceedings began, Clara tried to play the doting aunt, her words dripping with insincerity. Mark played the role of the repentant father, but his eyes were cold and calculating. But when Aaron spoke, his voice clear and unwavering, the truth shone through. "I want to stay with my mom. She's been there for me when no one else was." The judge's decision came like a ray of sunlight through the clouds. Full custody granted to me, with no visitation rights for Mark and Clara. As we left the courtroom, Mark's face was a mask of rage, and Clara's eyes burned with malice. But it didn't matter. We had won. Aaron and I, together. The victory in court brought a temporary sense of peace, but it was short-lived. Mark and Clara, like wounded animals, became more desperate and dangerous in their tactics. They started a slanderous campaign, spreading lies and rumors about me and our community. It was a psychological warfare I hadn't anticipated. One evening, Aaron came home from school, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mom, kids at school are saying you stole me from Dad, that you're keeping me away from him because you're mean." My heart broke at his words. "Aaron, you know that's not true. Everything I've done to protect you and Elise." He nodded, but the doubt was evident in his eyes. "I know, Mom, but it's hard. They don't understand." I hugged him, feeling his small body tremble. "I know it's hard, sweetheart, but we'll get through this. We're stronger than their lies." As the days passed, the rumors grew more vicious. Clara had always been cunning with her words, and now she used them like a weapon to turn my world upside down. I knew I had to fight back, but I was wary of stooping to their level. Then, one day, Mark showed up at my workplace, a facade of remorse plastered on his face. "Lauren, can't we just talk about this, for Aaron's sake?" His words were like poison, and I could see through his act. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice, Mark. Now live with it." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You're ruining my life, Lauren. You and that kid." I pulled away, my voice steady. "No, Mark. You did that all by yourself." As I walked away, his parting words sent a chill down my spine. "This isn't over, Lauren. I won't give up that easily." The legal victory had given me custody of Aaron, but it hadn't ended the war. Mark and Clara were relentless, and I could see the toll it was taking on Aaron. He was caught in the middle of a battle he didn't understand, torn between his biological father and the mother who had never left his side. One night, Aaron came to me, his face etched with conflict. "Mom, what if Dad changes? What if he wants to be a real dad?" His words hit me hard. "Aaron, I know he's your dad, and it's normal to hope for that, but we have to see people for who they are, not who we want them to be." Aaron was silent for a moment, then looked up at me, his eyes clear. "I know, I just wish things were different." I held him close, whispering, "I do too, Aaron, I do too." Despite the ongoing battle, I had to ensure that Aaron and Elise remained my priority. They were my strength, the reason I fought so hard, and I would do anything to protect them, to give them the life they deserved, free from the shadows of Mark and Clara's deceit. The relentless campaign by Mark and Clara took a darker turn, evolving into outright harassment. They seemed to be everywhere, outside my workplace, near Aaron's school, always lurking, always watching. It was a psychological siege, and I felt its weight every day. But I refused to be intimidated. It was time to hit back, to make them realize they couldn't trample over our lives without consequences. I scheduled a meeting with Mr. Thompson, my resolve like iron. "Mr. Thompson, it's time we take more aggressive legal action. I want to file for a restraining order against Mark and Clara, and I want to sue them for harassment and defamation," I declared. Mr. Thompson nodded in agreement. "I think that's a wise decision, Lauren. Their behavior is unacceptable, and it's time they face the legal repercussions." The legal proceedings were grueling, but I stood firm. In court, Mark played the victim, a man wronged by his vindictive ex-wife. Clara, ever the actress, wept about being denied the chance to be a part of her nephew's life. But their performance couldn't mask the truth. The judge saw through their facade and granted the restraining order. Additionally, they were ordered to pay damages for their defamatory actions. As we left the courtroom, Mark's face was a mask of fury, while Clara's eyes burned with unspoken threats. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I had the law on my side. Their defeat in court, however, did little to quench their vendetta. If anything, it seemed to fuel their spite. One day, I received a chilling phone call from Mark. "You think you've won, Lauren? You think you can just destroy my life and walk away? I'll make sure you regret this," he hissed through the phone. I clenched my jaw, fighting back the fear his words invoked. "You brought this on yourself, Mark. I'm just protecting my family." "You haven't seen the last of me, Lauren. This isn't over," he spat before hanging up. His threat hung in the air like a toxic cloud, but I wouldn't let it break me. I had Aaron and Elise to think about. They were my world, and I would go to any lengths to shield them from Mark and Clara's malice. But as days turned into weeks, the constant stress began to wear me down. The never-ending vigilance, the fear of what Mark might do next, the pressure of being a single mother, it was all-consuming. One evening, as I put Elise to bed, Aaron came to me, his expression somber. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Dad sounded really mad on the phone. I pulled him into a hug, my heart aching for the worry he had to bear. "We're going to be okay, Aaron. I won't let anything happen to us. I promise." But even as I spoke the words, I knew the battle was far from over. Mark and Clara were like a storm on the horizon, and I needed to be ready for whatever they threw our way. The weeks following the court ruling were a tense and watchful time. Mark and Clara, now bound by the restraining order, had receded into the shadows, but their silence was more unnerving than their threats. I knew this lull was just the calm before another storm. Then it happened. Clara, in a move of sheer desperation, orchestrated a public scene. I was picking up groceries when she appeared out of nowhere, screaming accusations. "You're a monster, Lauren! You've torn our family apart!" Clara wailed, drawing the attention of bystanders. I stood my ground, my voice steady. "Clara, you need to leave. You're violating the restraining order." Her face twisted in rage. "I don't care. The world needs to see what kind of person you really are." But her theatrics backfired. The store manager, recognizing the disturbance, called the police. As they escorted a hysterical Clara away, her image of the wronged aunt crumbled. This public meltdown was the final straw. The police charged Clara with violating the restraining order and public disturbance. Mark, too, faced consequences. His involvement in the harassment and defamation, now fully exposed, led to his arrest. As I watched them being taken away, a part of me felt a pang of pity. They had descended into their own hell, a pit they had dug with their lies and hatred. But this feeling was quickly overshadowed by a sense of justice. They were finally facing the consequences of their actions. In the aftermath, the community's perception shifted. The truth about Mark and Clara's deceit and manipulation became apparent. People who had once whispered behind my back now offered their apologies and support. Aaron, witnessing the downfall of his father and aunt, had mixed emotions. "Mom, is it wrong to feel happy about Dad and Aunt Clara getting arrested?" I took his hand, understanding his inner turmoil. "It's okay to feel relieved, Aaron. They hurt us a lot. It's okay to want justice for that." The battle that had consumed our lives for months finally seemed to be over. Mark and Clara, once towering figures of intimidation, were now diminished, their power to harm us stripped away. As I tucked Aaron and Elise into bed that night, a sense of peace settled over me. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while I felt hopeful about the future. With Mark and Clara's legal retribution, a heavy burden lifted from our shoulders. The days seemed brighter, and our home was filled with laughter once again. Aaron's smile returned, and Elise's innocent giggles were a balm to our scarred hearts. The community's support was overwhelming. Apologies turned into offers of help, and slowly the rumors and whispers faded away. We were rebuilding our lives, piece by piece. But the true testament to our newfound peace came on my birthday. Aaron, now more mature and thoughtful, had a surprise for me. He approached with a shy smile, a small gift in his hand. "Happy birthday, Mom. I made this at school for you," he said, handing me a beautifully crafted photo frame. It held a picture of the three of us, smiling and happy. Tears welled up in my eyes as I hugged him. "Thank you, Aaron. This is the best gift I could ever ask for." Later that day, as we celebrated with a small party, our little family felt whole again. Friends and neighbors joined in, their presence a symbol of the life we had reclaimed. During the party, a new face appeared. It was Tham, a kind and understanding man I had met through my work. His support during our trials had been unwavering, and his presence now felt like a promise of new beginnings. "Happy birthday, Lauren. I hope this year brings you all the happiness you deserve," Tham said, his eyes warm and sincere. I smiled, feeling a spark of something new, something hopeful. "Thank you, Tham. It's already off to a great start." As the party wound down, Aaron came up to me, a serious look on his face. "Mom, I've been thinking, maybe it's okay to start new things, to be happy again." I knelt down to meet his gaze. "It's more than okay, Aaron. We've been through a lot, and we deserve to be happy." He nodded, a small smile gracing his lips. "I like Tham. He's nice. And I think he makes you happy." I hugged him, my heart full. "He does, Aaron, and I'm glad you like him." That night, as I put Aaron and Elise to bed, I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't known in years. We had faced our demons and emerged victorious. Our future was ours to shape, and it looked bright and full of promise. Life had thrown us into turbulent waters, but we had learned to navigate the storm. Now it was time to enjoy the calm, to embrace the new dawn that awaited us. The evening had settled into a comfortable silence, the kind that wraps around you like a well-loved quilt. I was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, when Zoe, my 10-year-old niece, her face pale under the kitchen lights, whispered, "Aunt Linda, the man in the garage is still breathing." I froze, a glass halfway to the cupboard. "What did you say, Zoe?" She bit her lip, eyes wide and serious. "I saw him. He's in the garage, and he's breathing." The simplicity of her statement, the earnestness in her gaze, it sent a chill down my spine. How could my niece, a child with a vivid imagination but also a sense of truth, say such a thing? And yet, the image she painted was horrifyingly clear. Ethan, my husband of over 2 decades, had been growing distant, his mood swings like the unpredictable tides. I'd attributed it to stress at work, perhaps a midlife crisis clawing at his sense of worth. But Zoe's words painted a sinister picture, one I couldn't ignore. "Stay here," I told her, my voice steadier than I felt. The garage was Ethan's domain, a place cluttered with tools and projects in various stages of completion. As I approached, the door seemed to loom before me, a barrier to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover. Inside, the dim light cast long shadows, transforming familiar objects into grotesque shapes. But there was no man, no stirring figure to validate Zoe's claim. Relief washed over me, mingled with confusion. What had Zoe seen? Was it a trick of the light, a child's imagination running wild? When Ethan came home later that night, his usual late return masked with the scent of cologne and a tired smile, I watched him closely. Zoe said she saw something strange in the garage, I ventured, watching for any flicker of guilt or panic. He laughed, a sound that once brought me comfort, but now seemed hollow. Kids and their imaginations, huh? Probably saw a shadow and thought it was a monster. But the way his gaze darted away, the slight tension in his shoulders, something wasn't right. That night, as Ethan's snores filled the quiet of our bedroom, I lay awake, Zoe's words echoing in my mind. My niece had never been one to make up stories, especially not ones so disturbing. Determined to uncover the truth, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, before Ethan woke, I slipped a voice recorder into the pocket of his jacket. It was a desperate, perhaps foolish act, but I had to know if there was more to his late nights and evasive answers. As the day dragged on, my anxiety grew. What would the recorder capture? Was I prepared for the truth, whatever it might be? That evening, when Ethan returned, his usual nonchalance seemed forced. He didn't notice the recorder as he hung his jacket by the door, and my heart raced as I waited for the right moment to retrieve it. The house was quiet when I finally pressed play, my hands trembling. The first few minutes were filled with mundane sounds, the car engine, Ethan humming tunelessly. But then, a voice, not Ethan's, sharp with anger. "You promised me, Ethan. You said you'd leave her." Claire. The name slipped from his lips in a whisper of guilt and longing. My breath caught as their conversation unfolded, a sordid tale of lies and betrayal. They spoke of me as if I were a nuisance to be dealt with, their words cutting deeper than any knife. I sat in the dark, the recorder's cold plastic a lifeline to a reality I no longer recognized. Ethan, the man I'd built a life with, had chosen Claire, his mistress, over me. Their disdain for me, their plans, it was all laid bare. Tears blurred my vision, but a fierce determination took root within me. Ethan and Claire believed they could manipulate my life, discard me like an unwanted toy, but I wouldn't let them have the last word. This betrayal was the catalyst, the moment that transformed me from a passive observer in my own life to an avenger, determined to right the wrongs done to me. Ethan and Claire would learn, the hard way, that underestimating Linda Collins was their gravest mistake. The following days were a masterclass in restraint. I watched Ethan, memorizing his habits, his lies wrapped in half-truths, served with a smile that no longer reached his eyes. The house we shared felt like a stage, each of us playing our part in a tragic play. Marianne, my sister, noticed the change in me. Over coffee one morning, her concern was palpable. "Linda, you've been distant. Is everything okay?" I debated telling her, exposing the raw, ugly truth, but hesitated. Instead, I forced a smile, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "Just tired, that's all." Zoe, ever perceptive, watched me with eyes too wise for her age. She didn't ask questions, but her silent support was a balm to my frayed nerves. Ethan's facade began to crack. His phone was a constant companion, messages hidden the moment I entered the room. "Work," he'd say, the excuse as flimsy as his fidelity. One evening, as we sat across from each other at dinner, the silence between us heavy, I decided to probe. "Ethan, is everything okay at work? You seem preoccupied." He paused, fork midway to his mouth, and then laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Preoccupied? Linda, darling, I'm fine, just the usual work stress. But you're home late so often now, and your phone, it's always buzzing." My voice was calm, but my heart raced. Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Darling, you worry too much. Everything's under control." I nodded, letting the conversation die, but my mind raced. His dismissals, the ease with which he lied, it fueled my resolve. Days turned into weeks, each one a game of chess. Ethan moved with a confidence born of years of deceit, unaware I was 2 steps ahead. The voice recorder became my ally, each snippet of conversation a piece of the puzzle. Claire's voice, demanding and petulant, filled our living room late at night when Ethan thought I was asleep. "I can't wait forever, Ethan. When are you leaving her?" Claire's impatience was a sharp contrast to Ethan's attempts to placate her. "Soon, Claire, I promise. We just need to be careful, plan it out. We can't rush this." Their words, their plans to erase me from my own life solidified my decision. Revenge wasn't just a desire, it was a necessity. Armed with evidence and a plan, I visited a lawyer, my steps determined. The office was sterile, the air thick with the scent of paper and ink. The lawyer, Mr. Jacobs, was a man of sharp eyes and a sharper mind. "Linda, how can I help you today?" His voice was gentle, but I heard the underlying steel. I laid out my case, the recordings, the betrayal. Mr. Jacobs listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he leaned back, his verdict heavy in the air. "Linda, you have a strong case for divorce, and the evidence of infidelity strengthens your position. But are you sure about this? Divorce is a significant step." I met his gaze, my resolve unwavering. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Ethan and his mistress can't get away with this. I want them to face the consequences of their actions." Mr. Jacobs nodded, understanding my need for justice. "Very well. We'll begin the proceedings. Rest assured, Linda, I'll fight for you." As I left his office, a sense of empowerment enveloped me. The path was set, the pieces in motion. Ethan and Claire thought they were the architects of my downfall, but they were merely pawns in a game they didn't understand. The anticipation of confrontation was a fire within me. Ethan's betrayal had shattered the illusion of our marriage, but in its place, a new Linda was emerging, one who would not be underestimated or cast aside. I returned home, the plan clear in my mind. Ethan and Claire would soon learn the cost of their deception. The stage was set, and I was ready to take my revenge. The day I decided to confront Ethan, the house felt colder, the walls bearing witness to the crumbling facade of our marriage. Ethan walked in, his usual late entrance, but tonight was different. Tonight I would shatter the silence. I waited in the living room, the voice recorder hidden in my pocket, a tangible reminder of his betrayal. Ethan, sensing a change in the air, hesitated at the threshold. "Linda, what's going on?" His voice wavered, a crack in his usual confidence. I stood facing him squarely. "We need to talk, Ethan, about us, about your late nights, and about Claire." Ethan paled, the mention of her name hitting its mark. "Claire? I don't know what you're talking about, Linda." "Don't insult my intelligence, Ethan. I know about the affair." I pulled out the voice recorder, pressing play. Claire's voice filled the room, demanding, selfish. Ethan's face contorted, the mask of lies falling away. "Linda, I can explain. Explain how you've lied to me, betrayed our marriage, explain how you've made plans with her to leave me as if I'm nothing." My voice was steady, but inside, a storm raged. Ethan stumbled over his words, the truth a bitter pill. "It's not like that, Linda. It was a mistake." "Claire, she meant nothing." "A mistake? She meant nothing?" I echoed, disbelief and anger swirling. "You don't get to diminish what you've done. You chose her, Ethan." He reached out, a futile attempt at reconciliation. "Linda, please, we can fix this. I love you, not her." I stepped back, repulsed by the touch of a man I no longer recognized. "Love? Your actions speak louder than your words, Ethan. You've made your choice, and now you'll live with the consequences." Ethan's desperation was palpable. "Linda, I'm sorry. Truly I am. Can't we just forget this happened? I'll end it with Claire. We can start over." "Forget? Start over?" I laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You expect me to just forgive and forget? After you've planned to leave me for her? No, Ethan. It's too late for apologies. I've spoken to a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce." The color drained from Ethan's face, the reality of his situation finally hitting him. "Divorce? But Linda, think about what you're saying. We can work through this." "There's no we anymore, Ethan. You destroyed that when you chose her over our marriage. The only thing left to discuss is the divorce settlement." Ethan sank into a chair, defeated, the weight of his choices bearing down on him. "Linda, please, is there no chance for us?" I looked at the man I had loved, now a stranger to me. "The only thing you're leaving this marriage with is your guilt. As for me, I'm taking back my life, my dignity. You and Claire, you deserve each other." Turning my back on Ethan, I left the room, the finality of our conversation marking the end of our marriage. In that moment, I wasn't just walking away from Ethan. I was walking towards a new beginning, free from lies and betrayal. The next steps would be challenging, navigating the divorce and rebuilding my life. But as I stood in the doorway, looking back at the man who had been my husband, I felt a surge of strength. Ethan and Claire had thought they could manipulate me, but they had underestimated my resolve. The drama of my shattered marriage was giving way to a tale of revenge and empowerment. Ethan had sown the seeds of his own downfall, and now he would reap the whirlwind. As for Claire, she would soon learn the price of coveting what wasn't hers. In the silence of the night, I made a vow to myself. No longer would I be the victim. It was time for Linda Collins to take control of her story, to write the next chapter on her own terms. The days following my declaration of divorce were a mix of cold civility and underlying tension. Ethan had moved into the guest room, a symbolic gesture of our broken union. He oscillated between pleading for reconciliation and silent resentment, a dance I no longer cared to participate in. One afternoon, as I was sorting through years of joint memories, deciding what to keep and what to discard, Ethan approached me, his demeanor one of forced casualness. "Linda, have you thought more about what I said? About us trying again?" I didn't look up from the task at hand, my voice steady. "There's nothing left to consider, Ethan. My decision is final." Ethan's frustration bubbled to the surface. "But Linda, can't you see I'm trying here? I've ended things with Claire. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Placing a photo album aside, I finally met his gaze. "Ethan, it's too late. You've done irreparable damage. There's no going back from this." His attempt to maintain a facade of contrition crumbled, revealing a glimpse of his true feelings. "So, that's it then? You're just going to throw away over 20 years of marriage because of one mistake?" "One mistake?" I echoed, incredulous. "You call an affair a mistake?" "No, Ethan. What you did was a choice, and now I'm making mine." Ethan's anger flared, a stark contrast to his previous pleas. "You're being unreasonable, Linda. You're letting your pride ruin everything." "My pride?" I stood, facing him squarely. "No, Ethan. It's my self-respect that you seem to have a problem with. I won't be manipulated or guilted into staying in a marriage that's lost all trust." Ethan opened his mouth to retort but seemed to think better of it, turning away with a muttered curse. The following week brought an unexpected confrontation. Claire, emboldened by desperation or perhaps delusion, appeared at my doorstep. Her appearance was the first face-to-face encounter since the revelation of the affair. "Linda, we need to talk," she stated, her tone demanding entrance. I blocked the doorway, my posture unyielding. "There's nothing to discuss, Claire. You've said enough." Claire's composure slipped, revealing the selfishness beneath. "You're making a mistake, Linda. Ethan loves me. You're just standing in the way of our happiness." The audacity of her words ignited a fire within me. "Your happiness? At the expense of my marriage and my life? You're delusional if you think I'll step aside for a homewrecker." Her face reddened, anger and entitlement warring for dominance. "I love him, and he loves me. You're just a bitter, old woman who can't let go." "Let go?" I laughed, a sound devoid of amusement. "Claire, I'm not holding on to Ethan. I'm freeing myself from a liar and a cheat. And as for you, you're welcome to him. But know this, the man who cheats with you will cheat on you." Claire faltered, her bravado crumbling. "You'll regret this, Linda. Ethan will never be happy with you." I stepped closer, my voice a whisper of resolve. "He's your problem now, Claire. But remember, when he lies to you, when he betrays you, you'll have only yourself to blame." Turning on her heel, Claire stormed off, her departure marked by a slammed car door and the screech of tires. Watching her leave, I felt a sense of closure. The confrontation was a catalyst, propelling me further away from the life I had known with Ethan and closer to the future I was determined to build for myself. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil, but I was ready. Ethan and Claire's selfishness had shattered my world, but in its place, I was building something stronger, something purely mine. The drama of betrayal was giving way to a tale of resilience and rebirth. My story was far from over. In fact, a new chapter was just beginning. The legal proceedings of our divorce began to unfold with a rhythm dictated by paperwork and court dates, a dance I never wished to learn. Ethan's attitude shifted from contrition to hostility as he realized I was serious about going through with the divorce. Our interactions, limited to necessary exchanges, were charged with the tension of a truce on the verge of breaking. It was during one of these exchanges, as we met to discuss the division of assets with our lawyers present, that Ethan's facade of cooperation crumbled entirely. "Linda, this is absurd. You're taking everything. What about me? What about my rights?" Ethan's voice rose, laced with indignation and disbelief. I remained calm, my lawyer's presence a stabilizing force. "Ethan, I'm not taking everything. We're dividing assets as per the law. You made your choices, and now there are consequences." Ethan scoffed, turning to his lawyer in a display of frustration. "This is what I get for years of marriage? She's stripping me of everything over a mistake?" His lawyer, a man of patience worn thin, tried to interject. "Ethan, we've gone over this. The terms are fair considering the circumstances." But Ethan wasn't listening, his gaze fixed on me. He spat. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Ruining my life, taking everything we built together." I met his gaze squarely, my voice steady. "I'm not ruining your life, Ethan. You did that on your own, and I'm not taking anything that isn't rightfully mine. You seem to forget the part you played in this." The back and forth continued, with Ethan's lawyer attempting to mediate, but Ethan's bitterness permeated the room. It was clear he saw himself as the victim, unwilling to acknowledge the pain and betrayal his actions had caused. As the meeting concluded, with little progress made, Ethan's parting words were a mix of threat and plea. "You'll regret this, Linda. You can't just erase me from your life." But I was resolute, bolstered by the support of my lawyer and the knowledge that I was fighting not just for my assets, but for my dignity and future. The following weeks were a testament to my resolve. I poured my energy into my work and began reconnecting with friends I'd neglected, rebuilding the life Ethan had tried to overshadow. The loneliness that crept in during quiet moments was a stark reminder of the cost of freedom, but I was learning to embrace it as a necessary part of healing. It was during this time of tentative rebuilding that I received a call from Marianne, her voice tight with concern. "Linda, have you heard? About Ethan?" I braced myself, unsure of what news my sister could bring that involved Ethan. "No, what happened?" "He's been fired," she revealed, the words heavy with implication. "His affair with Claire, it wasn't just a secret from us. He was her superior at work. The company found out and, well, they didn't take it lightly." The news was a shock, yet part of me felt an inevitable justice in the outcome. Ethan's recklessness had finally caught up with him, his professional life now as fractured as his personal one. "Are you okay?" Marianne asked, her concern palpable even over the phone. I paused, considering her question. "I'm relieved in a way. It's another confirmation that I made the right decision. Ethan's choices have consequences, and it's time he faced them." The conversation with Marianne ended on a note of sisterly support, but as I hung up, I couldn't help but reflect on the twisted path of retribution Ethan and Claire had found themselves on. Their actions had woven a web of consequences that extended far beyond our failed marriage. As the divorce proceedings continued, with each step forward feeling like a battle won, I realized that the greatest revenge was not in the suffering of Ethan, but in the life I was building from the ashes of his betrayal. My resurgence was a testament to my strength, a narrative of triumph over the deception that had sought to define me. The final divorce settlement meeting was set in a stark, impersonal conference room, the kind of place where futures were dismantled and divided like mere business transactions. Ethan was already there when I arrived, his posture rigid, the lines of defeat etched deeply into his face. As we sat down at the table, flanked by our lawyers, the air was thick with unspoken words and the ghosts of a shared past. The lawyer began to outline the terms of the settlement, a fair division of assets that leaned in my favor, acknowledging the imbalance Ethan's actions had caused. Ethan, simmering with a mix of resentment and resignation, finally spoke, his voice laced with bitterness. "So this is it, then? You take everything? Leave me with nothing?" I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the man I had once loved, reduced to this shell of self-pity and blame. "Ethan, you're not being left with nothing. But actions have consequences. We both know you brought this on yourself." His laugh was hollow, devoid of humor. "And what about you, Linda? You come out of this smelling like roses, the wronged wife, while my life is in shambles." "It didn't have to be this way, Ethan. You made choices. You lied, you cheated, you destroyed our marriage, not me. I'm just picking up the pieces of my life, I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. The lawyer, sensing the escalating tension, interjected, "Let's focus on finalizing the agreement. Are there any objections to the terms as they stand?" Ethan glanced at his lawyer, a silent communication passing between them. Then, with a resigned sigh, he shook his head. No objections. As signatures were applied to paper, formalizing the end of our marriage, Ethan's mask of indifference slipped, revealing a flash of the man I had once known, filled with regret and loss. "Linda, he started, his voice trailing off, the weight of his remorse palpable. But it was too late for apologies, too late for what-ifs. Our story had ended, the final chapter written in the sterile language of legal documents. After the meeting, as I walked to my car, the sense of closure was bittersweet. I had fought for this moment, for my freedom from a marriage poisoned by betrayal. Yet the victory was hollow, the cost measured in years of love and trust, now irretrievably lost. The days that followed were a mixture of relief and reflection. The divorce was final, the battle won, but the war had taken its toll. I threw myself into work, into rebuilding a life that was wholly mine, yet the shadow of my failed marriage lingered, a reminder of the fragility of happiness. It was during this time of transition that I received an unexpected call from Claire. Her voice, when she spoke, was a far cry from the confident homewrecker I had confronted months ago. "Linda, I don't expect you to care, but I thought you should know. He's gone, left town, left me," Claire confessed, her voice breaking. I paused, absorbing her words, the schadenfreude I had anticipated feeling nowhere to be found. Instead, there was only a profound sadness for all that had been lost. "Claire, I'm sorry. For all of it," I said, surprising myself with the sincerity of my words. "You're sorry? After everything?" Claire's confusion was evident. "Yes, because in the end, we were both victims of Ethan's selfishness. I hope you find a way to move on from this, Claire. I hope we both do," I replied, ending the call with a sense of finality. The conversation with Claire was a turning point, a moment of unexpected grace amid the wreckage of our intertwined lives. It was a reminder that the best form of revenge wasn't the suffering of those who had wronged us, but the ability to rise above, to heal, and to find peace. As I looked ahead to the future, I realized that my journey was just beginning. The end of my marriage to Ethan was not just an ending, but a gateway to new beginnings, to possibilities unencumbered by the past. I had emerged from the storm stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next, with a heart open to the promise of tomorrow. I sat at my desk, staring blankly at the computer screen, the silence in our small apartment weighing heavily on me. The sound of Derek's laughter from the living room where he lounged in front of the TV grated on my nerves. My back ached from sitting too long, and my eyes burned from hours of work. I hadn't moved since breakfast. "Emily, when's dinner?" Derek called out, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "Soon," I responded, my voice barely audible even to my own ears. As I stood up, every muscle in my body protested, reminding me of the long, uninterrupted hours I'd spent at my makeshift home office. Entering the kitchen, the sight of the morning's unwashed dishes greeted me. I sighed and started preparing dinner, my mind replaying the conversation I had with Derek earlier. "It's just not fair," I muttered to myself. I couldn't understand why Derek expected me to handle everything at home just because I worked remotely. Doesn't he see how hard I'm working? My train of thought was interrupted by Derek entering the kitchen. "Hey, the bathroom sink is clogged. You'll fix it, right?" he asked casually, as if it was a given. I nodded, biting my tongue to keep from lashing out. It felt like my efforts were invisible to him, my job, the housework, his never-ending demands. Dinner was a quiet affair. Derek broke the silence with a casual bombshell. "I think my mom might need to stay with us for a bit. She's getting older, and it's tough for her alone." I stopped eating, my fork suspended in midair. "Stay with us? Derek, I'm already at my limit. How am I supposed to take care of your mom, too?" He just shrugged. "It won't be long. You're always home. You can manage." His words ignited a fire within me. "Manage? I'm not some robot, Derek. I have my limits," but he didn't seem to hear me. His attention had already shifted back to his phone, scrolling through social media, completely oblivious to my growing despair. That night, as I lay in bed, the feeling of entrapment was suffocating. Derek's disregard, his expectations, the constant undervaluing of what I do. It was all too much. Something had to change, but the question of how loomed large and unresolved in my mind. As sleep finally claimed me, a haunting thought lingered. I can't keep living like this. I woke up the next morning with a heavy heart, the dread of facing another day like the last weighing on me. The apartment was quiet. Derek had already left for work. As I brewed my coffee, the thought of his mother moving in with us lingered uncomfortably in my mind. Mid-morning, I received a text from Derek. "Mom's excited about the move. You'll do great taking care of her." The message felt like a punch in the stomach. I stood there, phone in hand, a mix of anger and helplessness swirling inside me. I tried to focus on work, but my thoughts kept drifting. By the time lunch rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. Then, the doorbell rang. It was Linda, Derek's mother. "Hello, dear. Just thought I'd drop by to discuss the living arrangements," she said, stepping inside uninvited. As we sat in the living room, Linda began detailing her expectations. "I like my meals at specific times, and I prefer the house kept very clean," she stated matter-of-factly. I struggled to keep my composure. "Linda, I have a full-time job. I can't be at your beck and call all day." She looked at me, her expression a mix of surprise and disapproval. "But taking care of the family is a woman's job, dear. Derek is working hard. You should support him." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The outdated notions, the blatant disregard for my work, it was all too much. "Taking care of the family doesn't mean neglecting my own needs and career," I countered, my voice firm. Linda scoffed. "In my time, we knew our priorities. It seems young women these days are too career-oriented." I was seething. This wasn't just about Derek now. It was a battle for my identity, my rights as an individual. That evening, when Derek returned, I confronted him. "Derek, this isn't going to work. Your mother expects me to be her full-time caretaker. I have my own life, my own career." Derek's response was cold and dismissive. "Emily, she's family. You're overreacting. Just make it work." "Make it work." "Derek, I'm not a maid or a nurse. I'm your wife, and I deserve respect and understanding," I shot back, frustration boiling over. He just laughed. "Respect? You're not exactly bringing in the big bucks, Emily. Remember who's paying most of the bills here." His words were like a slap in the face. I realized then that Derek didn't value me or my contributions. I was just a convenience in his life, nothing more. That night, I lay awake, Derek's words echoing in my mind. The realization hit me hard. I was in a marriage where I wasn't valued or respected. Something inside me snapped. No more. I wouldn't be a doormat any longer. I made up my mind. I was going to fight back, reclaim my life. Derek had no idea what he had unleashed. The time for being the obedient, accommodating wife was over. It was time for action, time for retribution. The following days were a blur of resentment and planning. My job, once a source of pride, now felt like the only lifeline in my chaotic world. Derek's indifference and Linda's looming presence in our lives were suffocating me. One evening, while Derek was out supposedly working late, I decided to clean up his clutter in the study. As I sorted through a pile of papers, I stumbled upon a credit card statement that made my heart sink. The balance was alarmingly high, and the list of transactions revealed frequent visits to a nightclub downtown. I felt a chill run down my spine. How could Derek spend so much behind my back? And on what? Nightclubs. A surge of betrayal washed over me. I had been struggling to keep our finances afloat, and here he was, squandering our hard-earned money. The next day, I confronted Derek. "What's this about you going to nightclubs? This credit card statement is outrageous." Derek froze, his expression shifting from surprise to defensiveness. "It's for networking. Business meetings. You wouldn't understand." "Business meetings? At nightclubs? Do you think I'm a fool, Derek?" I could barely contain my anger. He scoffed. "You're overreacting, Emily. It's part of my job. I need to entertain clients." The lies and excuses were too much. Entertain clients? With our money? While I'm cutting back on everything to make ends meet? Derek didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Look, Emily, you wouldn't get it. This is how business is done. Just leave it to me." His dismissive attitude was the last straw. It wasn't just about the money or the nightclubs. It was his complete disregard for our partnership, for me. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, bank statements, credit card bills, anything that could show the extent of Derek's deceit. I needed to be prepared for what was coming. I was no longer the passive wife he thought he married. I was going to stand up for myself. And then it happened. A casual conversation with a colleague led to a revelation that turned my world upside down. Derek wasn't just spending our money on nightclubs, he was seeing other women. I felt numb. The betrayal, the lies, the financial deceit, it was all too much. Derek had made a mockery of our marriage. That night, I confronted him again, armed with the information I had gathered. Not only are you wasting our money, but you're also cheating on me. Who are you, Derek? His reaction was one of shock and anger. You've been snooping around, spying on me. Yes, Derek. I had to, and I'm glad I did. I see you for who you really are now, I said, my voice steady but filled with disgust. Derek tried to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. He had betrayed me in the worst possible way. As he stormed out of the apartment, I knew that this was the end. But it wasn't just the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of my journey to justice and retribution. Derek had underestimated me for the last time. The next morning dawned with a sense of grim determination for me. I had spent the night awake, planning my next steps. Derek's betrayal wasn't just a personal affront, it was a wake-up call. I was done being the victim. When Derek finally slunk back into the apartment, his face was a mix of guilt and defiance. So you're just going to throw everything away over some accusations? He sneered, trying to regain control of the situation. Accusations? Derek, I have proof! I countered, my voice firm. You've been lying and cheating for who knows how long. This isn't just a small mistake. It's a complete betrayal of our marriage. He tried to interrupt, but I wasn't having any of it. No, you listen to me for once. I've been carrying this relationship on my back, managing our finances, taking care of the house, all while you've been living a double life. Derek's face contorted with frustration. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just how men are. You're too sensitive. That comment was like a slap in the face. How could he be so callous, so utterly disrespectful? Just how men are. That's your excuse. I deserve better than a cheating, lying husband. Derek scoffed. You think you can do better? Good luck, Emily. You won't survive a day without me. His words were meant to hurt, to belittle me, but they only fueled my resolve. Survive without you? Derek, I've been the one managing everything while you've been out gallivanting. I don't need you. In fact, I'm better off without you. The look of shock on Derek's face was almost satisfying. He hadn't expected this side of me, the side that wouldn't back down. I continued, I want a divorce, Derek. I can't be with someone who has so little respect for me, for our marriage. Derek laughed bitterly. Divorce? You think you can just walk away? We'll see about that. But I was resolute. Yes, we will see. And trust me, Derek, I'll make sure I walk away with what I deserve. As he stormed out of the apartment, I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be tough, but I was ready. I was no longer the same woman Derek thought he had married. I was stronger, fiercer, and I was going to fight for my rights. This confrontation was more than just a clash. It was the moment of clarity I needed. It was time to take back control of my life, and that meant bringing Derek to justice. He had underestimated me for too long, and now he would see the consequences of his actions. In the days that followed, my resolve only grew stronger. The apartment felt like a prison, with every room echoing Derek's betrayal and lies. I began to meticulously plan my escape from this toxic environment. One evening, as I sifted through our financial documents preparing for the legal battle ahead, Derek barged in, his face twisted in anger. You're really going through with this divorce nonsense? He spat. I looked up, meeting his gaze with a calm I didn't feel. It's not nonsense, Derek. It's the consequence of your actions. He laughed, a cold, harsh sound. You think you can just walk away and start over? Who do you think you are? I know exactly who I am, I replied steadily. I'm someone who deserves respect and honesty, something you clearly can't provide. Derek sneered. You'll come crawling back. You need me, Emily. His arrogance was astounding. No, Derek, I don't. I've been taking care of myself in this household for years. I'll be just fine. As the days passed, I secretly began to pack my essentials. I contacted a divorce attorney and scheduled a meeting. I knew I needed to be strategic and precise if I was going to come out of this unscathed. The day I received confirmation of my legal representation, Derek confronted me again. So you've got yourself a lawyer? You're serious about this? Yes, I am, I said, my voice steady. I'm not going to let you walk all over me anymore. I deserve better. Derek's face contorted with rage. You think you can take me on? I'll drag this out until you have nothing left. But I was undeterred. I'm not afraid of you, Derek. I've been through enough. It's time for me to stand up for myself. The day I left, I felt a mixture of fear and liberation. I took one last look at the apartment, a place that once represented love and companionship, but had become a symbol of deceit and heartache. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered to myself, this is just the beginning. In my car, I called my lawyer. It's done. I've left the apartment. We can proceed with the divorce. Good, came the reply. You're doing the right thing. We'll make sure you get what you're entitled to. Driving away, I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in years. Derek had underestimated me, but I was going to show him that I was not just a bystander in my own life. I was the protagonist, and this was my story of retribution. Now free from the suffocating atmosphere of the apartment, I found temporary refuge at a friend's place. As I sat in the quiet of the guest room, I realized the magnitude of what I had embarked upon. It was not just about escaping a failed marriage, it was about reclaiming my dignity and self-worth. My phone rang, breaking the silence. It was my lawyer. Emily, I've started going through the financial documents you provided. There's a lot here that works in your favor. Derek's spending habits, the debts he's racked up. It's going to strengthen your case. I felt a surge of relief. Thank you. I want to make sure he can't just walk away from this unscathed. He needs to face the consequences of his actions. My lawyer's voice was reassuring. He will. We're going to make sure of it. In the weeks that followed, the legal proceedings began to take shape. I was determined to expose Derek for who he truly was, a deceitful, selfish man who had taken advantage of my trust and loyalty. During our first mediation session, Derek's true colors shone through. You're blowing this out of proportion, Emily. We could have worked this out, he said, feigning a conciliatory tone. Worked this out? After all the lies and cheating? You really expect me to just forgive and forget? I countered, my voice laced with contempt. Derek's facade slipped, revealing his frustration. You're just being vindictive now. Is this what you want? To drag us both through the mud? It's not vindictiveness, Derek. It's about justice. You can't expect to treat someone like you did and not face any repercussions, I replied, my resolve unwavering. As the legal battle intensified, so did Derek's attempts to sway me. He sent messages, oscillating between apologies and accusations, trying to manipulate my emotions, but I had seen through his charade. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control. Finally, the day came when the extent of his financial irresponsibility was laid bare in court. The judge looked over the records, his expression stern. Mr. Thompson, can you explain these expenditures? Nightclubs, luxury items, trips, while your wife was managing the household on a tighter budget? Derek stumbled over his words, his usual confidence faltering under the weight of his own deceit. I watched, a sense of vindication growing within me. This was more than just a divorce. It was a reckoning. Derek was finally being held accountable, and I was the architect of his downfall. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had stood up to Derek, faced him head-on, and emerged stronger. This was not just a battle for assets or alimony, it was a fight for my very identity. And I was winning. The days turned into weeks, and the divorce proceedings that I thought would be a marathon turned into a sprint. Derek, once so full of bluster and bravado, was crumbling under the legal scrutiny and the mounting evidence of his financial misdeeds and infidelity. During a particularly tense mediation session, Derek tried to play the victim. You're ruining my life, Emily. All for what? Some misplaced sense of revenge? I looked him straight in the eye, my voice steady. This isn't about revenge, Derek. It's about justice. You lived a lie at my expense. It's only fair that you face the consequences now. His response was a mix of anger and desperation. I made a few mistakes, sure, but you're taking it too far. You're going to leave me with nothing. That's the point, Derek. You left me with nothing but lies and debt. Now, you get to see how that feels, I retorted. The legal battle was grueling but necessary. With each court appearance, with every revelation of Derek's duplicity, I felt a step closer to closing this painful chapter of my life. Then came the day of the final hearing. The courtroom was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the heated emotions that filled the space. Derek's lawyer made a final plea for leniency, painting him as a remorseful husband who had simply lost his way. But my lawyer was brilliant, methodically dismantling each of their arguments. She laid bare the extent of Derek's betrayal, not just in terms of our marriage, but also the financial havoc he had wreaked. When the judge finally spoke, his words were like a balm to my bruised heart. "Mr. Thompson, your actions have not only violated the trust of your marriage, but have also placed an undue financial burden on Mrs. Thompson. The court finds in favor of Mrs. Thompson in the matters of alimony and division of assets." Derek's face, once so arrogant, was now a picture of defeat. He glanced at me, but I looked away. I had no sympathy left for him. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of profound relief. The battle was over. I had stood up for myself and won. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a personal triumph over the lies and manipulation that had once threatened to engulf me. As I stepped into the sunlight, a free woman, I realized that this was more than just karma striking back at Derek. It was a testament to my strength and resilience, a declaration that I was no longer a victim, but a survivor. The final gavel had been struck, and the divorce was now a reality. I stood outside the courthouse, taking in deep breaths of freedom. The journey had been arduous, but I emerged stronger, more resilient. I was no longer the woman who Derek thought could be easily subdued. In the weeks that followed, I began rebuilding my life. The financial settlement had been favorable, giving me a much-needed cushion to start anew. But it wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming my identity. I found a new apartment, a place that I could call my own, free from the memories of Derek's betrayal. Decorating it became a therapeutic process, each piece reflecting my renewed sense of self. One day, as I was enjoying a coffee in my new living room, my phone rang. It was a friend, curious about how I was coping. As we chatted, she mentioned Derek. "Have you heard? Derek's really hit rock bottom. He lost his job, and I heard he's been struggling to make ends meet," she said, a hint of disbelief in her voice. I paused, taking in the news. Part of me felt vindicated, knowing that Derek was finally experiencing the consequences of his actions. But there was no joy in it. His downfall was of his own making, a result of choices he had made. "Yeah, I heard something about that," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. "But I'm more focused on moving forward. I've got a lot to look forward to now." And it was true. The ordeal had taught me the importance of self-worth and the strength of my resilience. I had found a new job, one that I was passionate about, and I was making plans for the future. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the best form of retribution wasn't in reveling in Derek's misfortunes. It was in living my best life, in thriving despite everything he had put me through. In the months that followed, I flourished. I made new friends, excelled in my career, and even began dabbling in hobbies I had long neglected. The shadows of my past with Derek gradually receded, replaced by a bright future that I was the architect of. Looking back, I realized that this journey was not just about escaping a toxic marriage. It was a journey of self-discovery, of finding my voice and strength. Derek had tried to break me, but instead he became the catalyst for my transformation. I was no longer the same woman who walked into that courtroom months ago. I was stronger, wiser, and above all, free. Free to live, to love, and to pursue happiness on my own terms. "Honey, I'm home!" Calvin's voice rang out as the front door slammed, his expensive Italian loafers clicking against the foyer tiles. I quickly minimized the browser window where I'd been scrolling through my social media feed. "In the kitchen," I called out, plastering a smile on my face. Calvin strode in, iPhone in hand, still fully engrossed in reading emails, even after his long day at the office. He gave me a cursory peck on the cheek before making a beeline for the liquor cabinet to pour himself a double scotch. Neat. "How was your day?" I asked, keeping my tone light and cheerful. "Did the big presentation with Axle Technologies go well?" Yeah, it was fine," Calvin muttered, eyes glued to his phone screen as he typed out a reply. "Just the usual client schmoozing and paperwork. You know how it is." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that I didn't actually know. How could I when he hardly told me anything about his work anymore? As a stay-at-home mom, my days looked decidedly different from Calvin's exciting world of business deals and high-powered meetings. Our son Eli chose that moment to come barreling into the kitchen, all gangly limbs and boundless 8-year-old energy. "Dad, can we play catch in the yard before dinner?" Calvin didn't even glance up. "Not right now, buddy. Daddy's had a long day and has to respond to some important emails." Eli's face fell. As usual, work came first for Calvin these days. "But you promised." Eli trailed off uncertainly. "We'll play a quick round of Candyland before midnight. How about that?" I suggested brightly, attempting to smooth over the hurt and disappointment plainly evident on Eli's face. "Candyland is for babies," Eli pouted. "I want to play real games like we used to. You know, before Dad got his big promotion." The accusation in his words hit home, echoing my own thoughts. Ever since Calvin made VP, our family life had taken a back seat to the growing demands of his job. Calvin let out an exasperated huff, finally glancing up from his phone. "Geez, Louise, all this nagging when I just walked through the door. Give me some space." He held up a hand impatiently before returning to his email app, effectively shutting out both me and his crestfallen son. I bit my tongue again, holding back the heated response I could feel bubbling up. Arguing would get me nowhere. "Come on, Eli. Help me set the table," I said gently instead. As we quietly put out the silverware and soup bowls, I made a mental note to vent about this later when I signed into my private Moms Only Facebook group. Logging into that community who understood my daily frustrations was sometimes all that kept me sane these days. Little did I know how much I'd soon come to depend on their solidarity and support. I tapped my foot impatiently, stealing another glance at the clock. 8:47 p.m. Calvin was late yet again. Ever since his promotion, his work hours had become increasingly erratic, the demands encroaching into evenings, weekends, and family time. He always chalked it up to unavoidable client calls or critical deadlines. Lately, I'd even noticed a few unfamiliar charges for upscale restaurants and bars on our credit card statements. Business dinners, no doubt. I checked the roast chicken in the oven, which had long gone cold and dried out. With a resigned sigh, I started clearing up the unused table settings, my growing resentment curdling in my stomach. Just as I dumped Eli's uneaten food in the trash, I heard the garage door open. Calvin strode in, loosening his tie with a self-satisfied smile. "Oh, good. You haven't had dinner yet," he said breezily. "I'm starved." I crossed my arms, unable to keep quiet this time. "It's 9 o'clock, Calvin. We ate hours ago. Not that you bothered letting us know you'd be late." He waved a hand flippantly. "Yeah, sorry about that. Got held up with an important client." "An important client," I echoed. "I suppose that's also why you've had so many working dinners lately?" Calvin rolled his eyes. "Can't you just heat up my food instead of giving me the third degree? I've had a long day." I bristled at his condescending tone. "Well, forgive me for being upset. I don't enjoy making dinner that no one eats or putting Eli to bed alone night after night." "Oh, you make it sound so dramatic. It's not my fault the job comes with demands." Calvin helped himself to Eli's leftover chicken, seeming wholly unaffected by my simmering resentment. "But I guess you wouldn't understand. It's not like you have a real career." His words felt like a slap, rendering me momentarily speechless. I found my voice, speaking through gritted teeth. "Raising your son is a full-time job. Just because I'm not some corporate bigwig schmoozing clients doesn't mean—" Calvin held up a hand. "Schmoozing is what pays for that fancy stove you love cooking on, I'll have you know. But keep standing there complaining. I'm sure that will get dinner on the table faster." Hot, angry tears pricked my eyes, but I forced them back, refusing to show weakness. Without another word, I strode to the fridge and angrily pulled out fixings for a sandwich. If Mr. VP wanted his late-night snack served on a silver platter after that little performance, he had another think coming. As I slathered mayo on bread with more force than necessary, my thoughts drifted to the Little Moms Facebook group I leaned on for support. No doubt about it, as soon as Calvin was asleep, I was logging on to vent. And who knows, maybe someone there had advice about getting through to a husband who blithely put work before family. If not, at least I knew my online friends would validate my frustration rather than trivialize it. I hummed under my breath as I tidied Calvin's home office, dusting the dark wood shelves and straightening the framed photos on his desk. As I moved a stack of legal pads, a receipt fluttered to the ground. I picked it up, planning to tack it back on the bulletin board. The letterhead made me pause. La Mystique Jewelers. With growing suspicion, I scanned the receipt. A pair of diamond earrings, over $1,000. Purchased while Calvin was supposed to be at a weekend conference in Dallas last month. I sank into Calvin's leather desk chair, my dust rag forgotten. Why would my husband buy such extravagant jewelry and not mention it? It wasn't my birthday or our anniversary. Unease swirled in the pit of my stomach as I yanked open the top desk drawer, rifling through. Maybe there was an explanation somehow. I found nothing but old bank statements, rubber bands, and paper clips. Slamming it shut in frustration, I leaned down to search the lower drawers. Jackpot. A thin printed folio tucked underneath a file folder caught my eye. Hands trembling, I opened it to see a hotel reservation confirmation for the Ritz-Carlton for this coming weekend. I stared blindly at the page. Calvin hadn't said anything about a work trip. I whipped out my phone to text my neighbor and close friend Nora. She responded immediately, telling me to take deep breaths and stay calm. I fired back a lengthy reply. I just found a jewelry receipt for some expensive earrings and a hotel booking for this weekend that I know nothing about. He didn't mention any conference or work travel. I think he could be having an affair. What else explains all the secrecy and lies? Nora answered right away, steady and practical as always. Don't panic yet, okay? There could be a reasonable explanation. Have you tried talking to Calvin about what you found? I took a shaky breath. No, I hadn't confronted him yet. Frankly, I was terrified at what trickle truth might emerge if I did. The damning evidence seemed clear. Nora responded once more. Look, why don't you post in your mom's Facebook group too? See if anyone there has some good advice or insight. Maybe others have gone through something similar. I bit my lip uncertainly. I'd vented plenty on that forum about Calvin's demanding work hours and frequent disinterest in family life lately. But I'd always stopped short of airing out our dirtiest laundry. Because deep down, I'd still hoped Nora was right and there was an innocent reason for Calvin's detachment. Now, though, I teetered on the edge of writing out my greatest fears. Gathering my courage, I signed on to the private group and poured out the entire story along with the recent disturbing discoveries. Almost instantly, support and suggestions came flooding in from the online circle I'd come to trust like family over the past year. As I read over the genuine words of comfort and solidarity, I realized this sisterhood gave me strength I'd badly need to confront whatever difficult truths lay ahead. I paced the living room, glancing impatiently at the clock. Calvin would be home any minute, and I still hadn't figured out how to confront him about what I'd uncovered. When the front door banged open, right on schedule, my heart leapt into my throat. I steeled my nerves as Calvin's footsteps echoed down the hall. Time to get answers. Hey, babe, what's cooking? Calvin breezed into the kitchen, loosening his tie. Smells good. I crossed my arms, gearing up to address the elephant in the room head-on. I wasn't making dinner. We need to talk. Calvin paused in the act of grabbing a beer from the fridge, blinking at my tone. What's going on? Why do you look so upset? I tossed the printed receipts and confirmation onto the granite countertop. Maybe you can explain these. Calvin glanced down, a crease furrowing his brow. This is just some paperwork from my office. What's the big deal? I exhaled sharply. Oh, I don't know. Maybe the $1,000 diamond earrings you apparently bought and failed to mention. Or this weekend hotel booking at the Ritz-Carlton that I know nothing about. Calvin's expression shifted, a tick in his jaw giving away his tension. Look, babe, let me explain. I cut him off. Are you having an affair? Is that what all the secrecy has been about? Hot tears I could no longer hold back streamed down my face. Calvin rubbed at his forehead, looking more irritated than contrite. No, I swear it's not like that. The earrings are for Julie's retirement gift. I used my personal card since it's not strictly company budget. I frowned uncertainly. His assistant was retiring this month after over a decade. Calvin continued, As for the hotel, I wanted to surprise you with a romantic weekend getaway for our anniversary next month. I was planning to sneak off while Mom watches Eli, but I guess the cat's out of the bag now. I searched Calvin's face, hesitant to fully accept his explanations. But his earnest expression seemed genuine. He stepped forward, enveloping me in a hug. "Hey, I get why you're upset. I'm sorry I worried you over nothing. Work just has me stressed and distracted lately, but I should make more of an effort at home." I let his familiar warmth thaw my misgivings. Maybe I had jumped to unfair conclusions after all. Calvin squeezed me gently before drawing back, his eyes apologetic. "We good?" I managed a watery smile in return, relief flooding me. Yeah, I think so." "Great." Calvin popped open his beer, previous tension dissipating. "I'm going to wind down watching the game. Chicken tetrazzini in the oven?" I nodded mutely, already mentally composing an update for my Facebook group. I'd let everyone know it was all just a false alarm and thanked them for their support. As I rinsed my tear-streaked face at the sink, I felt rather silly for working myself up over what turned out to be sweet attempts at surprises. With the air cleared, I could finally stop looking for deceit behind Calvin's benign explanations. I waved half-heartedly as Calvin's car disappeared down the street, off to catch his flight for the business trip he still claimed was innocent. After I'd caught him in those lies about the jewelry and hotel booking, I made only a token protest when he announced this sudden San Francisco work junket. "It's an important client prospecting summit," he'd insisted when I questioned the short-notice travel. "I might drum up some big accounts." Once I might have swallowed his excuses without blinking, but now, standing alone on the curb, doubts swirled ominously. Time to get some answers, once and for all. I hustled Eli off to school with a churning stomach before sitting down at my laptop with fresh resolve. If Calvin wanted to keep secrets, I'd discover the truth myself. Cracking my knuckles, I opened a search tab and typed in Affair Investigation Services Bay Area. Numerous local PI agencies popped up. I clicked the first listing and dialed the number with trembling fingers. A female voice answered promptly. "Carter Investigations, this is Amber speaking." I took a deep breath. "Hello, Amber. I need help confirming whether my husband is having an affair." Her brisk tone gentled with practiced reassurance. "You've come to the right place, ma'am. We handle digital forensics, surveillance, and evidence gathering." We discussed my suspicions surrounding Calvin's recent trips and behavior. Amber laid out a game plan for tracking his movements and communication during this San Francisco visit. By the time I hung up half an hour later, plans were in motion to uncover the truth. I sat staring blankly for several minutes before pulling up my mom's Facebook group. I poured my heart out to them about finally taking action to catch Calvin red-handed rather than taking any more excuses at face value. Responses of solidarity and fury on my behalf lit up my feed instantly. "You got this, girl. Cheaters never prosper. Stay strong and trust your gut. You'll get the proof you deserve." Their outpouring of sisterly outrage and encouragement buoyed me. No matter what ugly truths emerged in San Francisco over the next few days, I knew I wouldn't have to face them alone. Over the next 48 tense hours, I could barely eat or sleep awaiting the PI's report. When Amber finally called, her grim tone said it all. She'd tracked Calvin from business drinks at the summit to an intimate penthouse dinner with a young woman who was certainly no client. The photos of them kissing in the elevator erased any last doubts. I sat numbly, clutching my phone long after Amber hung up, hot tears spilling down my cheeks. Rage, hurt, and vindication tore through me in waves. My online friends talked me through the emotional tempest, helping me emerge feeling emboldened rather than shattered. The night before Calvin returned from his sordid tryst, I lay awake plotting. If that two-timing snake thought I'd meekly accept his betrayal, he had another thing coming. I knew all his moves and lies now, and I'd make sure both his personal and professional lives burned with the full force of my wrath. My virtual confidant cheered me on as I outlined my next decisive steps toward decisive revenge. I paced the living room, glancing impatiently at the clock. My heart pounded as I waited for Calvin's return from San Francisco, his deception finally exposed and undeniable. All I needed now was the final damning confrontation to enact my meticulous revenge strategy, half already bubbling with pent-up rage. At exactly 6:03 p.m., headlights flashed across the front window right on schedule. I sprang into action, flicking off the lights. As keys turned in the front door lock, I hit play on the Bluetooth speaker, cueing dramatic background music set to a low, tense volume. "Lena?" Calvin's confused voice echoed down the hall in the dim lighting. "Why are all the lights off? Where is everyone?" He stepped into the living room, rolling his suitcase behind him. I stood in the shadows, my face no doubt a stony mask in the glow of the faux candles I'd artfully arranged on the coffee table to complete the dramatic scene I'd staged. "Lena, what the hell is going on here?" Calvin peered around, seeming equal parts bewildered and impatient. I stepped forward, holding up the incriminating surveillance photos I could now recite by heart. "I know about her, Calvin, about everything." He blinked rapidly, eyes darting down to the images that undeniably exposed his public affair for all its ugliness. I watched the truth sink in as his face paled under his golden California tan. "Now let me explain," he stammered, composure crumbling. "Don't bother denying it. I have an entire dossier exposing your lies." I threw the file folder down, glossy prints scattering across the floor. Calvin and his young paramour outside the restaurant, kissing passionately in the hotel corridor, tangled naked in bed. Calvin held up his palms, alarm breaking through the surface as he finally grasped the magnitude of revelations I held. A knock at the door stole his attention. Right on cue, his executive assistant glided in, a look of disgust marring her usually pleasant features. "Lena showed me everything, Calvin. How could you disrespect our family this way?" "Mom, Calvin floundered helplessly as she brushed past him with an icy glare. Part 1 of my public confrontation succeeded flawlessly. The door swung open again, just as planned, this time admitting 2 of the partners from Calvin's firm. I had leaked my evidence anonymously earlier that day, justification be damned. Their stern faces told me they'd seen the damaging images. "Calvin, your behavior here raises serious ethical concerns," the tall one intoned. As they advanced, firing rapid questions, Calvin seemed to shrink under their disapproval. When the doorbell rang once more, he looked wildly on the verge of fleeing. Too late. Mia, his youthful former fling, strode in confidently on cue. The sight of her in our home seemed to rob my husband of any last shred of poise. He gaped wordlessly as she crossed her arms, one manicured brow raised contemptuously. "You didn't tell me you had a wife and kid, Calvin. What a scumbag move." Her biting words hit their mark as planned. I watched Calvin crumble before our eyes, the architect of his own demise. Check and mate. My pulse raced with adrenaline and vengeance long overdue. All that remained was to deliver the final blows to this shell of a man. Swift, irreparable destruction on parallel fronts, personal and professional. I stepped forward, ready to take my bow as ringmaster of this unfolding spectacle. I crossed my arms, glaring at the shell of a man I'd once called my partner, as he wilted under the weight of judgment from the colleagues and lover I'd orchestrated to bear witness. At my nod, the tall partner spoke first. "Misusing company resources to carry on an affair is unacceptable. The board will deliberate appropriate consequences." His stern pronouncement made Calvin flinch. The other man chimed in. "And pawning off this indiscretion as a client prospecting trip is outright fraud." I watched Calvin shrink further as their accusations rained down, striping away every facade to expose his true measure. The office assistant I'd enlisted as a surprise eyewitness drove the knife deeper. I corroborated Calvin's inappropriate absences and falsified travel reports. She held up a log I hadn't seen before, no doubt evidence dredged up to cement Calvin's professional implosion. His ashen face telegraphed dawning realization that his career teetered on oblivion's edge at last. A muted vibration from my phone signaled the private investigator's arrival outside, right on time. I strode to the front door and ushered her in silently. Amber's camera flashed as she took in the scene, no stranger to documenting such carnage. I cleared my throat, commanding the room's immediate attention. All eyes turned to me as I gestured grandly to Amber. Thanks to extensive investigation, Calvin's lies now have broader exposure. Meet Amber Carter, the PI who gathered damning proof of infidelity. Amber gave a curt nod, face impassive. GPS tracking and messaging records confirm an ongoing illicit relationship, among other violations of trust. Her cool statement of facts landed like a blow as she turned the camera on Calvin once more. With his sins exposed for all to see, only one final act remained to erase Calvin's legacy entirely. I nodded to Mia, Calvin's former fling. Her scarlet lips curved as she sashayed forward, ignoring his stammered pleas. Our starry-eyed love affair didn't mean much to you in the end, did it? Her scathing words dripped with disdain. Once I realized you had a whole family at home, I got in touch with your wife. We both deserved the truth. Calvin reached for her, desperation etched across his features. Mia, please, I swear I was going to leave. She sidestepped him with an icy laugh. So now cheating isn't enough? You'd abandon your wife and son, too? At her biting words, any lingering sympathy in the room evaporated. I stepped up to deliver the final blow. You'll certainly have time to reconsider your twisted priorities very soon. I slapped divorce papers against Calvin's chest with vindictive force. I'll be petitioning for sole custody of Eli, naturally, and you can expect a settlement that stipulates, let's call it reasonable compensation. Calvin opened and closed his mouth soundlessly as the reality of total personal annihilation crashed down. I watched with venomous satisfaction, ignoring the tears spilling down his cheeks. The time for mercy or weakness had long passed. I faced our rapt audience and sketched a graceful bow. My moment of hard-won retribution against cruelty and callousness was at last complete. As Amber's camera flashed again, sealing Calvin's downfall for posterity, I tallied my losses and gains with clarity. The battle was ended. Justice served. From the ashes, my new life could finally rise. I scrolled through notifications on my phone, a sense of wild satisfaction welling inside, as Calvin's ruin reverberated ever outward. He certainly reaped bitter fruits from the seeds of deceit he'd sown. Texts poured in confirming the fallout I'd orchestrated at Calvin's firm. Inquiries from local media hoping to run salacious stories on the disgraced executive. Legal documents from my divorce attorney outlining proposed settlement terms tilted generously in my favor. Calvin hadn't even attempted to challenge the ruinous demands, no doubt recognizing it as fair recompense after years of dismissiveness and now blatant betrayal. The final satisfaction came a week later in the form of a simple envelope. I opened the notice slowly, anticipation rising. According to the letter, Calvin agreed to mensual spousal support payments that reflected a sizable portion of his now-slashed income for the next decade, allowing me to maintain comfortable single motherhood. I cracked a grin, visions of the student loan and credit card debts that had always weighed me down vanishing. No doubt Calvin felt fortunate his transgressions hadn't landed him in total financial insolvency. Buoyed by my newly secured future, I joined my virtual community of fellow scorned wives to offer an update. I regaled them with the gratifying details of Calvin's professional cancellation, the generous divorce settlement, and most importantly, Eli's well-being shielded from his father's toxicity. My friends flooded the chat with applause emojis and words of camaraderie. Girl, you are an inspiration. The sisterhood cheers your triumph. Here's to new beginnings, Nora wrote. I smiled, gratitude for their solidarity warming me. My journey toward independence after betrayal might have ended very differently without such robust support. Now my platform and visibility within that community presented new possibilities I'd never contemplated as an isolated housewife and mother. I drummed my nails on the counter, thoughtful. Then I posted a new thread announcing my idea to start a blog, Phoenix Rising, from housewife to thriving single mom. I could share advice about financial independence, legal protections, coping emotionally, and raising confident kiddos, maybe even offer pro bono consultations eventually. The response was instant and explosive. Followers deluged me with enthusiasm for my initiative and offers to collaborate, hunger evident for the experience and perspectives I now embodied. Their outpouring sparked inspiration. By the time Eli bounded through the front door, chattering about his day, I had already outlined several cathartic blog topics and commissioned a web designer friend for a site mock-up. I hugged my son tightly, his familiar exuberance grounding me. Gazing at his sweet, innocent face, I made a silent vow to nurture his spirit closely in the days ahead and ensure through my new mission that no wife would face betrayal's devastation alone and disempowered ever again. Our difficult journey toward this point had gifted me that purpose. And Calvin's callousness, ironically, granted liberty from former constraints at last. I tucked away the divorce decree with a sense of finality, meeting my son's inquisitive eyes squarely. The future stretched bright before us, full of possibility and hope. I woke up to the sun streaming through the curtains, the kind of morning that promised new beginnings and adventures. Today was supposed to mark the start of my honeymoon with Nathan, a trip we'd been planning for months, a trip that symbolized the beginning of our life together. Except it wasn't. As I stretched, reaching for my side of the bed, I found it empty. Nathan's absence wasn't unusual. He was often up before dawn, a habit from his days in the military. I patted across the room, the soft carpet comforting underfoot, and then I saw it. My passport, or rather, what was left of it, shredded and scattered across the kitchen counter like confetti. My heart sank. "Nathan!" My voice, usually calm and measured, was now laced with panic and disbelief. He emerged from the living room, a smug expression on his face that I hadn't seen before. "Looking for this?" he asked, gesturing towards the remnants of my passport. "Why would you do this?" I demanded, my voice trembling, not just from anger but from a deep, unsettling betrayal. He shrugged, the smugness never leaving his face. "I never planned to go with you, Marla. The trip is for me and my mother. She deserves it more than you do." The words hit me like a physical blow, leaving me speechless. This was not the man I thought I married. This was someone else, someone cruel and unrecognizable. "But why?" was all I could muster, a mix of anger, confusion, and heartbreak in my voice. "Because you're not family. Not really. My mother, she's my family. She's been with me through everything. What have you done for me, Marla? What have you done for us?" His words were like daggers, each one intended to hurt, to cut deep. And they did. In that moment, I realized the man I loved, the man I married, was a stranger. A stranger who had meticulously planned to hurt me, to exclude me from a moment that was supposed to be about us, about our future together. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. There was no love there, no remorse for what he had done, only a cold, calculating indifference. "I want you out," I said, my voice steadier now, fueled by a newfound resolve. "Out of this apartment, out of my life." Nathan laughed, a cold, harsh sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. "You think you can get rid of me that easily? You're nothing without me, Marla, you'll see." But as he turned to leave, a spark ignited within me, a burning desire for revenge. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Nathan and his mother Evelyn had shattered my dreams, betrayed my trust, and tried to break me. But they were wrong about me. I was not going to be a victim in their twisted game. I started picking up the pieces of my passport, each fragment a reminder of the betrayal I had suffered. But as I did, I also began picking up the pieces of myself, my resilience, my strength. I would rebuild, not just my passport, but my life. And Nathan, he would regret the day he decided to cross me. This was not just about a ruined honeymoon anymore. It was about justice, about righting the wrongs that had been done to me. Nathan and Evelyn had unleashed something within me, something fierce and unyielding. They thought they had won, but this was only the first chapter of a story they hadn't anticipated. A story of revenge, of a woman scorned but not defeated. A story where I, Marla, would have the final say. As I sat in the silence of our once shared apartment, the echoes of Nathan's departure still ringing in my ears, I couldn't help but reflect on the signs I had chosen to ignore. It was as if the pieces of my shattered passport mirrored the fragments of our relationship, each piece a red flag I had naively overlooked. The first time I noticed something was off was at a company gala. Nathan, always the charming senior manager, had introduced me to his mother, Evelyn, with a sense of pride. But the warmth in his voice didn't match the coldness in her eyes as she gave me a once-over, her lips curling into a disdainful sneer. "So, you're the one," she had said, her voice dripping with unspoken criticisms. Nathan had laughed it off, squeezing my hand a little too tightly. "Don't mind her. She's protective of me," he'd whispered, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. Then there were the subtle, controlling tendencies Nathan exhibited, which I mistook for care. He'd insist on choosing my outfits for events, criticizing anything he deemed not up to the standard of his social circle. "We're a power couple, Marla. We need to look the part," he'd say, as if my own taste and autonomy were inconveniences rather than aspects of my identity. But it was during our wedding preparations that the true extent of his manipulation and his mother's influence became painfully clear. What was supposed to be our day quickly turned into Evelyn's spectacle. She wanted a grand, lavish ceremony that would be the talk of the town, dismissing my desires for a more intimate, personal celebration. Nathan, ever the dutiful son, sided with her on every decision, from the venue to the guest list, which ballooned to include people I had never even met. I thought this wedding was about us, I had argued, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice as Nathan and Evelyn pored over brochures for the most expensive venues in the city. "It is about us, darling," Nathan had said, not looking up from the glossy pages. "But my mother has been dreaming of this day since I was born. We can't disappoint her." And so, I found myself writing checks for a wedding that felt more like a royal coronation than the beginning of our marital journey. Each signature was a reminder of the power Evelyn wielded over Nathan, and by extension over me. The night before our supposed departure for what was meant to be our honeymoon, Nathan's ultimate betrayal felt like a cruel climax to the series of compromises and sacrifices I had made. As he smugly unveiled his plan to take his mother on the trip instead, citing some twisted logic of gratitude, I realized the depth of his deceit. My marriage, it seemed, was nothing more than a strategic move in a game I didn't know we were playing. But amidst the turmoil and heartbreak, a spark of defiance ignited within me. I refused to let Nathan and his mother destroy me. I had been passive for too long, mistaking Nathan's control for care, his manipulation for love, no more. As I began to plan my next steps, my resolve hardened. The evidence of Evelyn's manipulative behavior and Nathan's complicity, though accidental, was a weapon I hadn't anticipated having. It was a chance to reclaim my voice, my autonomy, and perhaps to exact a measure of revenge on those who had wronged me so deeply. "I'll need a lawyer," I muttered to myself, the words feeling like a vow. And evidence, more evidence. I started sifting through our financial statements, emails, anything that could shed light on the extent of Nathan's betrayal. It wasn't just about the ruined honeymoon anymore, it was about exposing the facade of the perfect husband and son duo. As I delved deeper, the initial shock and pain of Nathan's betrayal transformed into a steely determination. This was not just my fight. It was a stand against manipulation, against a false love that sought to control rather than cherish. Nathan and Evelyn had underestimated me, seeing me as nothing more than a pawn in their twisted game. They were wrong. I was not the same woman who had watched her dreams get shredded along with her passport. I was stronger, fueled by betrayal, but driven by a newfound resolve to fight back. And as the dawn broke on a new day, I knew one thing for sure. Nathan and Evelyn would regret the day they decided to make an enemy out of me. The days leading up to the wedding had been a battlefield, with every decision contested and every choice scrutinized. As I sat alone in the now too quiet apartment, the memories of those battles flooded back, each one a testament to the unwavering influence Evelyn held over Nathan and the spineless compliance he showed in return. I remember standing in the center of what would be our reception hall, a place more grandiose than I had ever imagined, feeling like a stranger at my own wedding. Evelyn, with her commanding presence, was directing the decorators with an iron fist, dictating every detail from the floral arrangements to the table settings. "Navy blue, not royal blue. Are you colorblind?" she snapped at a young woman arranging the centerpieces, who looked close to tears. I had wanted simple elegance, something personal and warm, but Evelyn's vision was cold, ostentatious. "Nathan, can we talk about this?" I had tried to intervene, hoping to salvage some part of the day as ours. He had simply placed a hand on my shoulder, his gaze never meeting mine. "Let her have this, Marla. It's important to her." His voice was flat, resigned, as if the wedding was not about us but about appeasing his mother. "But it's our wedding," I had protested, my voice barely above a whisper, drowned out by the cacophony of Evelyn's demands. Nathan had just shrugged, a gesture that had become all too familiar, and walked away, leaving me to stand alone amidst the chaos of what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. As the wedding day approached, my excitement had turned to dread. I felt like an actor in a play, performing a role that had been scripted by someone else. The joy and love that should have been at the heart of our celebration were overshadowed by the extravagance and opulence of Evelyn's desires. The morning of the wedding was a blur of activity. As I sat in front of the mirror, getting ready, I caught a glimpse of myself. The reflection staring back at me was a bride, yes, but one whose eyes were filled with uncertainty and sadness. "You look beautiful, darling," Evelyn had said, appearing behind me. Her voice was soft, but her eyes, reflected in the mirror, held a gleam of triumph. It was as if she had won a prize, securing her son's loyalty and obedience at the cost of my happiness. The ceremony itself was a spectacle. I walked down the aisle, my arm linked with Nathan's, feeling like a pawn in a game I had lost control of. The vows we exchanged felt hollow, the words echoing in the grand space, bouncing off the walls, and the indifferent faces of the many guests I didn't know. It was during the reception that the reality of my situation became painfully clear. Evelyn, resplendent in her role as the mother of the groom, was holding court, basking in the adulation of the guests. Nathan was by her side, attentive and doting, while I was relegated to the sidelines, an accessory rather than a partner. As I watched them from a distance, a conversation between Nathan and one of his colleagues caught my attention. "She's perfect for you, man. Your mother must be thrilled," the colleague had said, clinking glasses with Nathan. Nathan had smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, she knows how to put on a show. But it's my mother who's really running the show." The words were like a slap in the face, a public acknowledgement of my diminished role in my own marriage. I realized then that I was not Nathan's partner. I was a means to an end, a way for him to maintain the facade of a perfect life dictated by his mother's ambitions. As the evening wore on, the celebration around me felt more like a funeral, mourning the death of my dreams and aspirations. The realization of Nathan's betrayal, his willingness to sacrifice our relationship on the altar of his mother's approval, was a bitter pill to swallow. But as I stood there, surrounded by the pomp and pageantry of a wedding that felt like anything but my own, a resolve began to form within me. Nathan and Evelyn had taken my voice, my agency, and my dreams, but they wouldn't take my future. I knew then that the path to reclaiming my life would be fraught with challenges, but I also knew that the first step on that path was acknowledging the truth of my situation. I was married to a man who saw me as nothing more than a pawn in his and his mother's game. But pawns, as I would soon show them, can become queens, and queens do not bow, they reign. The night before what was supposed to be the beginning of our honeymoon, the facade of our marriage crumbled entirely. Nathan's revelation of his true intentions wasn't just a shock, it was a declaration of war. He had meticulously planned this betrayal, savoring the cruelty of his deception. Sitting across from him at our dining table, a space that had once symbolized our shared life, I felt a cold detachment take over me. His words echoed in the silence, a silence that was about to be shattered. "So, you never intended to go with me at all?" I asked, my voice steady, belying the storm of emotions within. Nathan's response was devoid of remorse. "Marla, let's be realistic. My mother deserves this trip. After all she's done for us, it's the least I can do." "Us?" The word tasted bitter. "There's no us, Nathan. There never was there? It's always been you and your mother against me." He leaned back, a smug expression on his face. "You're taking this too personally. It's just a trip." "Just a trip?" I repeated, incredulous. "You destroy my passport, betray our marriage, and it's just a trip?" Nathan shrugged, as if dismissing my feelings. "You'll get over it. You always do. But this time was different. This time I wouldn't get over it." His callousness, his betrayal, it was all too clear. Nathan and Evelyn had not only underestimated me, they had ignited a fire within me, a fire that demanded justice. "You think you've won, don't you?" I said, rising from my chair. "You think you can just replace me with your mother and I'll quietly disappear?" "That was the plan," he admitted, arrogance oozing from every word. "You were a convenient choice, Marla, but convenience has its limits." His words were meant to hurt, to belittle, but they only served to strengthen my resolve. I was no longer the compliant wife, the silent partner in their twisted game. I was an adversary, and I would fight back. "I want a divorce," I declared, my voice ringing clear and strong. Nathan laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "And what will you do, Marla? You have no evidence, no grounds. You'll walk away with nothing." But he was wrong. I had the evidence of his betrayal, his deceit, and his manipulation. The recordings, the documents, the financial discrepancies I had started to uncover. Nathan had played his hand, but the game was far from over. "I have more than you think," I countered, meeting his gaze with newfound defiance. "And I will use everything in my power to expose you for what you are." Nathan's smugness faltered, a flicker of concern crossing his face. "You wouldn't dare." "I dare," I affirmed. "You and your mother have taken everything from me, but I will not let you take my dignity. I will not let you win." The conversation ended there, Nathan retreating into silence, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of his mistake. As for me, I spent the night planning, strategizing. Nathan's betrayal had shattered my heart, but it had also cleared my vision. I could see now, see the lies, the manipulation, the sheer cruelty of his actions. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer, a family friend who had always been supportive. I explained the situation, sparing no detail, no matter how painful. The lawyer was sympathetic but also pragmatic. "We'll need solid evidence," he said, echoing my thoughts from the night before. "Anything you have can help build a case not just for the divorce but for any legal action we might pursue against Nathan." I assured him that I had started gathering evidence, that I was prepared to do whatever it took to expose Nathan and Evelyn's deceit. It was a daunting path, one fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil, but I was ready. As the days passed, my resolve only strengthened. Nathan's betrayal had not only broken our marriage, it had awakened a fighter in me, a woman determined to reclaim her life from the ashes of deception. This fight was not just for me. It was for every moment of joy Nathan and Evelyn had stolen, for every dream they had shattered. They thought they could discard me, erase me from their perfect little world. They were wrong. I was Marla, and I was just getting started. In the weeks following Nathan's revelation, I moved through my days with a singular focus: to dismantle the life of lies he had built at my expense. The discovery of the recordings was accidental, a forgotten feature on my phone activated during one of their many plotting sessions in our living room. Listening to their voices, Nathan and Evelyn, weaving their web of deceit, was both horrifying and galvanizing. They had not just planned to replace me on the honeymoon, but had orchestrated much of our marriage to their benefit, with little regard for me or my well-being. Armed with this evidence, I set up another meeting with my lawyer, Mr. Carter, who listened intently as the recordings played. The room was heavy with the weight of betrayal, each word from Nathan and Evelyn a testament to their manipulation. "This is good," Mr. Carter finally said, pausing the playback. "It's a clear insight into their intentions and your husband's duplicity." I nodded, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. "There's more," I said, explaining how I had begun to notice discrepancies in our financial statements, hints of further deceit. Mr. Carter's brow furrowed. "We need to tread carefully, Marla. Financial fraud is a serious accusation, but with the right evidence, it could significantly impact the divorce proceedings and possibly lead to criminal charges against Nathan." The idea of pursuing legal action was daunting, yet the thought of Nathan facing real consequences for his actions was a balm to my wounded heart. "What do we need to do?" I asked, ready to take whatever steps necessary. "Continue gathering evidence. Bank statements, emails, anything that seems out of place. We'll also hire a forensic accountant to review your finances. It's important we build a solid case." Leaving Mr. Carter's office, I felt empowered. The path was clear, and for the first time since Nathan's betrayal, I felt a sense of control over my own life. The days that followed were a blur of activity. I pored over bank statements, credit card bills, and email exchanges, my eyes catching inconsistencies I had previously missed. Each discovery was a piece of the puzzle, revealing the extent of Nathan's financial deceit. It was during one of these late-night sessions that I stumbled upon an email that chilled me to the bone. Nathan had been embezzling funds from his company, funneling them into a secret account. The amounts were staggering, the implications clear. Nathan wasn't just a cheat, he was a criminal. With shaking hands, I forwarded the email to Mr. Carter, feeling a mix of fear and determination. This was the evidence we needed, but it also meant the stakes were higher than I had imagined. The next morning, I received a call from Mr. Carter, his voice urgent. "Marla, the email you sent me last night. We need to act on this immediately." I met him at his office, where he had already laid out a plan of action. "We'll present this evidence to the company's legal department anonymously. It's important we protect your identity for now. I agreed, understanding the need for caution. The thought of Nathan being exposed for his crimes was both terrifying and exhilarating. This was more than just a personal vendetta. It was about bringing a criminal to justice. As we prepared the evidence package, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me to this moment. Nathan and Evelyn had tried to break me, but instead, they had forged me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to stand up for herself. The day we sent the evidence to Nathan's company, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had done what was right, not just for me, but for anyone else Nathan might have harmed with his deceit. The aftermath was swift. Nathan's company launched an internal investigation, and within weeks he was fired, his reputation in tatters. The news of his embezzlement and subsequent dismissal spread quickly, leaving him and Evelyn socially ostracized. As for me, I watched from the sidelines, my heart heavy with the knowledge of the pain I had caused, yet lightened by the sense of justice served. I had awakened from the nightmare Nathan and Evelyn had created, armed with the truth and a determination to rebuild my life on my own terms. This was not the end of my story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where I was the author, writing my own destiny, free from the shadows of deceit. Nathan and Evelyn had underestimated me, but I had emerged from their betrayal stronger and more resilient. I was Marla, and I was just getting started. In the weeks following Nathan's dismissal, the facade of our life together crumbled, revealing the depth of his deceit. Armed with the evidence of his embezzlement, I had become an architect of his undoing, meticulously planning each move with the precision he had once used against me. The discovery of further malfeasance in Nathan's financial dealings was the final nail in the coffin. Documents hidden in a locked file on his laptop, which I accessed thanks to a forgotten password scribbled on a piece of paper, painted a damning picture. Nathan hadn't just embezzled from his company, he had defrauded several clients, siphoning funds into accounts only he controlled. As I handed these documents over to Mr. Carter, my lawyer, his reaction was solemn. "Marla, this is serious. With this evidence, Nathan could face criminal charges." "Good," I replied, my voice devoid of any satisfaction. "He deserves to face the consequences of his actions." Mr. Carter nodded, understanding the weight of the situation. "I'll contact the authorities. It's out of our hands now." The fallout was swift and severe. Within days, Nathan was arrested, his crimes laid bare for the world to see. The news outlets had a field day, painting Nathan as a modern-day swindler, a man who had lived a double life at the expense of those he had vowed to protect and serve. But amidst the chaos of Nathan's downfall, Evelyn remained defiant, her support for her son unwavering. "He's done nothing wrong," she declared to anyone who would listen, including me, when she confronted me outside the courthouse after Nathan's arraignment. "This is your doing," she hissed, her eyes burning with rage. "You've destroyed my son's life over what? Money? Revenge?" I met her gaze, my resolve steel. "No, Evelyn, I exposed Nathan for who he is. You're just too blind to see it." Evelyn's response was a venomous sneer. "You think you've won, but you're alone now, Marla. Was it worth it?" Turning away from her, I didn't bother to reply. Evelyn's words couldn't hurt me. I wasn't alone. I was free from their lies, their manipulation, free to rebuild my life on my terms. In the aftermath of Nathan's arrest, I found solace in action. I worked with the authorities, providing them with everything they needed to ensure Nathan faced justice. And with each day that passed, I felt the heavy chains of my marriage to Nathan dissolve, leaving me lighter, stronger. But even as Nathan's trial loomed, a part of me couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had led me here. I had loved Nathan, or at least the man I thought he was. The man who had promised to share a life with me, only to betray me in the most profound ways. Sitting in the courtroom, watching as Nathan was led in, handcuffs binding his wrists, I felt a pang of something akin to sorrow. Not for Nathan, but for the love I had lost, the trust that had been shattered. The trial was a spectacle, with evidence of Nathan's crimes presented in stark, unflinching detail. Witnesses testified to his manipulation, his greed, his utter disregard for anyone but himself. And through it all, Nathan remained stoic, his face an emotionless mask, even as his world crumbled around him. It was only when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, that I saw a crack in his facade. a flicker of fear, of realization that his actions had consequences. As Nathan was led away, sentenced to years in prison, I felt a chapter of my life close. The man I had married, the life we had shared, it was all gone, replaced by a future filled with uncertainty, but also with hope. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt the weight of the past few months lift. I had fought for justice, not just for myself, but for all of Nathan's victims. And in doing so, I had found a strength I didn't know I possessed. The road ahead would be challenging, of that I had no doubt. But for the first time in a long time, I looked forward to facing it, not as Nathan's wife, but as Marla, a woman who had weathered the storm and emerged stronger on the other side. The days following Nathan's sentencing were a whirlwind, a mix of media frenzy and quiet introspection. While the world seemed obsessed with the downfall of a man once revered in our community, I focused on rebuilding the life that had been upended by his deceit. Mr. Carter called me into his office to discuss the next steps. The atmosphere was less tense than before, a sense of closure permeating the air. "Marla, the hardest part is over," he began, his voice carrying a note of relief. "Now, we need to finalize your divorce and ensure you're protected financially." I nodded, the reality of my situation settling in. "What about the assets Nathan hid? Can we recover any of that for the victims?" Mr. Carter leaned forward, his expression serious. "We're working on it. The court's decision on Nathan's assets will play a big part. Rest assured, we'll do everything to ensure justice is served on all fronts." The divorce proceedings were expedited given Nathan's crimes. There was no contest, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and his legal team advised him to settle quickly. In a stark courtroom, devoid of the drama that had characterized Nathan's criminal trial, our marriage was dissolved. It was a simple declaration from the judge, but to me it felt like a proclamation of freedom. As I walked out, Evelyn cornered me, her presence as unnerving as ever. "You think you've won, don't you?" she spat, her face twisted in anger. I stopped, facing her. "This isn't about winning or losing, Evelyn. It's about right and wrong. You might never understand that." Evelyn scoffed. "You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy." "I'm not happy," I replied, truthfully. "No one wins in situations like these. I just hope one day you'll see the truth about your son." Turning away from her, I left the courthouse feeling lighter, the final tie to Nathan and his toxic influence severed. The following weeks were a time of adjustment. I secured a position at a new firm, eager to leave behind any association with Nathan and his crimes. My colleagues were supportive, offering a fresh start I desperately needed. One evening, as I sorted through the remnants of my married life, deciding what to keep and what to discard, a knock on my door startled me. It was Mr. Carter, looking more informal than I'd ever seen him. "Marla, I have some news," he said, stepping inside. I braced myself, unsure of what to expect. "What is it?" He handed me a document. "The court has finalized the division of Nathan's assets. A significant portion has been allocated to his victims, as you suggested. And," he paused, "there's a settlement for you, as his spouse who suffered due to his actions." I scanned the document, the numbers and legal jargon blurring before my eyes. "I don't want his money," I said, the idea repulsive. Mr. Carter nodded, understanding. "It's not about the money, Marla. It's about accountability. You have a chance to start anew, to use these resources for good." The idea settled slowly, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. I could use this settlement to help others, to make amends for the damage Nathan caused. In the end, I decided to donate a significant portion of the settlement to charities supporting victims of financial crimes, keeping only what I needed to secure my future. The decision brought a sense of peace, a feeling that, in some small way, I was contributing to the healing process, not just for myself, but for others affected by Nathan's actions. Life moved on. The media frenzy died down, Nathan's name becoming a cautionary tale whispered in financial circles. I rebuilt my life, step by step, finding strength in the lessons learned from the ordeal. And through it all, I discovered a resilience within myself, a determination to rise above the chaos and create a life defined not by the actions of others, but by my own choices, my own values. As I sat in my new office, looking out at the city below, I realized this chapter of my life was closed. Nathan and Evelyn were part of my past, but they would not dictate my future. I was Marla, and I had emerged from the shadows of deceit into the light of a new beginning, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with courage and integrity. As the dust settled on the tumultuous events that had upended my life, I found myself standing on the precipice of a new beginning. The legal battles were over. Nathan was facing the consequences of his actions behind bars, and Evelyn, once a towering figure of manipulation, was now a pariah, her son's crimes casting a long shadow over her existence. Yet, the path to rebuilding was not just about moving on. It was about reflection, understanding, and ultimately, forgiveness. Not for Nathan or Evelyn, but for myself, for having been ensnared in their web of deceit. One afternoon, as I sat in my new office, the cityscape outside a testament to resilience, a familiar face appeared at my door. It was James, a colleague who'd become a friend, someone who had seen me through the darkest days. "Marla, got a minute?" he asked, his tone hesitant. "Of course, James, come in," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, fidgeting with his hands before speaking. "I heard about the settlement, and what you chose to do with it." He paused, searching for the right words. "It's admirable, Marla. Not many would have made the same choice." I offered a small smile. The decision to donate a significant portion of the settlement to victims of financial crimes had not been made lightly. "It was the right thing to do," I said simply. "Nathan's actions hurt many people. If there's a way to help them, even in a small way, then that's what I need to do." James nodded, understanding. "And what about you? How are you holding up?" The question caught me off guard, a reminder of the personal cost of the whole ordeal. "I'm getting there," I admitted. "Every day is a step forward. Some days are harder than others, but I'm determined to make the most of this second chance." James's visit was a reminder of the support system I had, the people who had stood by me when the world seemed to crumble. It was a stark contrast to the isolation that Nathan and Evelyn now faced. Rumors had reached me of Evelyn's struggles, her attempts to reach out to old friends and allies, only to be met with cold shoulders and turned backs. Her son's crimes had tainted her by association, her manipulative nature now exposed for all to see. And Nathan, once a figure of respect and authority, was now a cautionary tale, a man who had lost everything because of his greed and deceit. The reports from prison spoke of a man grappling with the reality of his actions, the lives he had ruined, including his own. In a way, their downfall was a form of justice, not just for me, but for all their victims. Yet I took no pleasure in their suffering. It was a somber reminder of the consequences of our actions, the ripples they create in the lives of others. As I continued to rebuild, focusing on my career and the new opportunities ahead, I also took time to heal. Therapy sessions became a part of my routine, a space to process the betrayal, the anger, and the loss. It was during one of these sessions that I came to a significant realization. Forgiveness was not about condoning Nathan and Evelyn's actions, but about freeing myself from the hold they had on my life. It was a difficult journey, one that required me to confront the deepest wounds and find a way to move forward. Months turned into years, and as I looked back on the journey, I saw not just the pain and the betrayal, but the growth and the strength that had emerged from the ashes. I had not only survived, I had thrived, building a life that was authentically mine. The final chapter of this saga was not written in the courtroom or the headlines, but within me. Nathan and Evelyn's legacy would forever be one of deceit and downfall, but mine would be one of resilience, compassion, and a relentless pursuit of justice. As I closed the door on this chapter of my life, I knew that the lessons learned would stay with me, guiding me as I navigated the future. I was Marla, no longer defined by the actions of others, but by my own choices, my own strength, and my own unwavering spirit. Is it just me, or does anyone else wish he'd just disappear? Lila's biting words cut through the tense dinner silence like a knife. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, as my world started unraveling around me. Across the table, Alex shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with his sister or me. I couldn't blame him. The animosity radiating off Lila was palpable. "Don't say that," I said automatically, though my voice lacked conviction. A part of me understood her resentment towards her father, towards my husband, Ethan. Lila scoffed and pushed away her half-eaten dinner. "Why not? It's true. He's never around anyway. His own kids are like strangers to him." That's enough, I said, more firmly this time. I tried to catch Alex's eye, hoping for some support, but he was staring resolutely at his plate. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. The ticking of the kitchen clock suddenly seemed deafening. I struggled to remember the last time we'd had a pleasant family dinner. One where Ethan was actually present instead of working late at the office. Again. I thought back to when Ethan and I first married. He'd been so charming, so attentive, the successful, handsome executive who could have had his pick of women. Yet, he'd chosen me, a shy grade school teacher from a modest background. When I became pregnant with Lila, shortly after the wedding, we'd agreed I would leave my job to focus on raising our children. Ethan's career was taking off, and he wanted me available for the kids. I'd been happy to do it at the time. It felt comfortable, traditional even, to embrace my role as a homemaker and mother. But lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd given up too much. With the kids in high school now, the house felt claustrophobic and isolating. I missed the purpose and fulfillment of my career, the intellectual stimulation of fellow teachers. Most days it was just me, rattling around in this big empty house while Ethan threw himself into his work. A work that seemed to benefit everyone but his own family. The shrill ring of Ethan's cell phone broke the heavy silence. He glanced at the caller ID. "I need to take this. Excuse me." His tone was clipped, devoid of any warmth, as he pushed back from the table and headed for his home office. Just another family dinner cut short. I moved robotically around the kitchen, packing up the uneaten food and wiping down the counters. As I placed Ethan's plate in the fridge, resentment simmered within me. I was tired of making excuses for him, explaining away his detachment from me and the kids, his constant business trips and office emergencies. Muffled voices drifted in from Ethan's office. He must have forgotten to fully close the door in his haste to take the call. I crept closer, wondering if I could discern who he was speaking with so urgently. "Oh, really? Paris? That sounds amazing." Ethan's voice sounded lighter, more enthusiastic. I frowned. As far as I knew, he had no upcoming trips to Paris planned. "Don't worry about her. Cora has no clue about us." I froze. "Us?" My hands started shaking. "It's under control," Ethan continued confidently. "She buys every excuse I give her, blames herself for being too needy or paranoid. It's pathetic." His cold, dismissive words felt like a slap in the face. Was this how he truly saw me? A foolish, oblivious housewife too weak to question his lies? Humiliation and anger battled within me. How long had he been deceiving me? How many business trips had he actually spent with someone else, lavishing affection and attention he denied his own family? I thought of the many nights I'd spent alone, waiting anxiously for his return. The endless efforts to keep things running smoothly at home, so he had no cause for complaint. My sacrificed career and dreams, all for this sham of a marriage. No more. I refused to be a passive victim in my own life. If Ethan thought he could continue this charade, he was in for a rude awakening. I returned to the kitchen, lips pressed in a determined line. Lila and Alex were clearing their dishes, avoiding conversation. I steeled myself with a deep breath. "How would you two feel about a trip?" I asked. "Just the three of us." Their eyes widened in surprise. I continued, "We could use a vacation. Get away for a bit. I think it would do us some good." Lila recovered first. "Seriously, Mom? That sounds great. Can we go somewhere fun like the beach?" Alex nodded eagerly. "I'm in if we can do some surfing." I smiled, even as my stomach churned with anxiety. Then it settled. I'll look at some options tonight. We could all use some distance from Ethan. Time away to clear our heads, and for me to plan my next steps. The girls' weekend idea I'd been mulling suddenly crystallized into something more purposeful, more permanent. I had been blind to Ethan's true nature for too long. I wouldn't ignore the cracks forming in our family, even if confronting them head-on terrified me. Whatever it took, I would find the truth about Ethan's activities and secrets. I owed that much to myself and our kids. The time had come to take control of my life and protect my children at all costs. Ethan may not see me as a threat, but that was about to change. The next morning, I woke with determination coursing through my veins. No more passive acceptance of Ethan's lies. Today, I would confront him and demand the truth. I waited until the kids left for school, then strode to Ethan's home office. He sat at his desk, focused intently on his computer screen, probably chatting with his mistress. The thought made bile rise in my throat. We need to talk, I said sharply. Now. Ethan's fingers stilled on the keyboard. He turned and regarded me coolly. What's this about, Cora? I crossed my arms. I think you know. The late nights at the office. The last-minute business trips. When does it end? Ethan's expression hardened. I told you my position requires long hours and travel, but I guess that explanation isn't good enough anymore. He practically spat the words. You're damn right it's not good enough, I shot back. Do you think I'm an idiot, that I don't notice how distant and cold you've become? How you're never around for this family? Never around? Ethan slammed his fist on the desk. I bust my ass to provide for you and the kids, to give you this cushy lifestyle, but all I get in return is nagging and accusations. I flinched at the fury in his voice, but stood my ground. We don't want your money, Ethan. We need a husband and father who's actually present in our lives, who gives a damn about us. Isn't that why I gave up my career? Ethan sneered. Please, your little teaching job was insignificant. I'm the one out there making real contributions. But you don't appreciate any of it. You're too paranoid, too insecure. His cruel words sliced through me. He was trying to flip the script, make this somehow my fault. I thought of him mocking my cluelessness on the phone last night and set my jaw. Not this time. You can try to blame me all you want, I said coldly. But I know about her, Ethan. It was a shot in the dark, but his face instantly drained of color. Her? What are you talking about? He tried to scoff dismissively. Have you completely lost your mind? I heard you on the phone, I pushed on, laughing about your weekend getaway to Paris with her, calling me pathetic for believing your lies. Ethan paled further but quickly composed himself. You're clearly confused, he said with eerie calmness. I went to Paris for work. You're letting your imagination run away with you. Don't you dare lie to me again, I exploded. I know what I heard. Just admit it already. For a long moment we just stared at each other, the air thick with tension. Then Ethan sighed and ran a hand over his face. His voice turned icy. Fine, Cora. You want the truth? I have been seeing another woman, have for over a year now, because clearly I wasn't getting what I needed here. His casual confession landed like a gut punch. I reeled, grasping the edge of his desk to steady myself. Over a year? How had I not realized sooner? How could you? I finally choked out. We're married. We have children. Ethan shrugged. I got bored. It happens. But I took care of my needs discreetly so as not to upset you. I'd say I did you a favor. Red-hot rage flooded through me. I dug my fingernails into my palms and fought to keep my voice steady. Get out, I said thickly. I want you out of this house today. Ethan stood slowly, straightening his expensive tie and cufflinks. With pleasure. I'll be at the Four Seasons until I find an apartment. He moved toward the door, but then paused. One more thing. You can't prove anything, so don't bother trying to drag my name through the mud. You'll only humiliate yourself. He held my gaze. This will stay our little secret. Understood? Without waiting for a response, he brushed past me and out of the room. I stood frozen, listening to his fading footsteps, overwhelmed by shock and fury. How dare he think he could threaten me into silence, that I would meekly accept his betrayal while he carried on his sordid double life? No, I refused to let him destroy our family and escape unscathed. I would find proof of his affairs and deceit. I would take him for everything he was worth. Ethan had awoken a wrath inside of me I'd never known existed, and I would channel every ounce of it to ensure he paid for his sins. Mom, what's going on? Alex's worried voice greeted me as soon as I picked him up from school. Dad's stuff is gone. Did you guys have a fight? I gripped the steering wheel tightly. There was no point lying to them now. We did fight, I said carefully. Your father has been unfaithful to our marriage. He's going to be staying somewhere else for a while. Alex's mouth dropped open in shock. Lila let out a harsh laugh from the back seat. I knew it. I told you he was cheating. Her eyes blazed with vindication. I held up a hand. Look, I know you're upset. I am too. But right now, we need to stick together as a family. My mind raced as I drove. I'd already called a divorce lawyer and opened a separate bank account, transferring half of our savings into it. A good start, but not enough. Not if I wanted to take Ethan down and rebuild a stable life for the kids. I thought of the photos displayed prominently around our house. Ethan grinning at charity galas, posing with important clients, accepting his promotion to partner at his law firm. He looked every inch the successful family man, but it was all a facade. There had to be more definitive proof of his duplicity. Something to confirm the mistress, the lavish gifts likely funded by our family's money. If I could uncover hard evidence, I'd have leverage for a favorable divorce settlement. But how? Ethan was careful about covering his tracks, and he had resources I lacked. He'd sworn his lawyers would demolish me if I tried anything. Unless... What if we hired someone? I mused aloud. A private investigator. Lila's eyebrows shot up, while Alex looked uncertain. Isn't that expensive, Mom? Don't worry about the money, I said firmly. This was something I needed to do, for their futures and mine. They'll find anything there is to find, Lila said supportively. Emails, bank statements, the whole deal. Alex still seemed hesitant, so I softened my tone. I know this feels extreme, but we can't blindly trust your dad anymore. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with before I confront him about a divorce. Alex's shoulders slumped. I get it, Mom, I'm just processing. He paused. Do what you need to do. I squeezed his hand, grateful for his maturity, even as my heart ached for his lost innocence. We'd all been forced to grow up too fast. Over the next few days, I discreetly interviewed PIs, assessing their experience with cases like mine. Most were sympathetic but clear. Catching someone like Ethan would be incredibly difficult. Still, a few seemed up for the challenge. In the end, I chose a Miss Carter. She was a petite, unassuming woman, but her steely eyes told me she was not to be underestimated. She assured me if there was evidence to find, she would find it. And find it she did. Barely a week later, Miss Carter presented me with a file stuffed with damning photos and financial records. They showed Ethan wining and dining a beautiful young woman at the most exclusive restaurants and clubs, lavishing her with expensive jewelry and a luxury sports car, paid for with money diverted from our accounts. I flipped through the photos with trembling hands, a mix of vindication and anguish coursing through me. Here was irrefutable proof of his duplicity and manipulation. I could destroy his polished public image with this file, force him to pay what he owed us. Miss Carter cleared her throat gently. I know this is difficult, but you have power now. Don't let him bully you into backing down. She held my gaze. Fight for you and your kids, Miss Collins. Make him pay. A deep resolve flowed through me, steeling my spine. She was right. The time for being a passive victim was over. If Ethan wanted to fight dirty, I would rise to the occasion. No more hiding the ugly truth to protect his reputation or mine. I thanked Miss Carter profusely, not caring that the bill wiped out half my personal savings. This was worth every penny. Armed with the damning file, I got to work. It was time to set the divorce proceedings in motion. Time to harness this rage and pain into actions that would reshape my future. On my terms this time, not Ethan's. Let him underestimate me at his own peril. I sat rigidly on the sofa, the manila folder containing Ethan's misdeeds clenched tightly in my lap. He would arrive any minute, expecting this to be just another discussion about divorce proceedings. He had no idea of the storm about to crash down around him. My anxiety mounted as the clock ticked later. Just as I began contemplating calling him, the front door finally swung open. Ethan strode in, looking irritated. Well, what was so urgent that I had to rush over here? He asked impatiently. I stood slowly, folder in hand. I think you know. Sit. Ethan's eyes darted to the folder, but he maintained his nonchalant facade. If this is about the settlement, my lawyer already told you. Sit. Down. My voice lashed out like a whip. Ethan blinked in surprise, but sank into the armchair facing me. I took a steadying breath. I'm going to make this very simple, I said, eerily calm. You have a choice. Agree to a divorce settlement that fairly compensates me and the children, or I go public with this. I dropped the folder on the coffee table between us. Crime scene photos splayed out, Ethan and the mistress at a steakhouse, embracing in a hotel lobby, her driving off in a shiny new sports car. Ethan stared at them, all pretense gone. His face went scarlet. You deceitful bitch, he hissed through gritted teeth. I told you not to mess with things you don't understand. I leaned forward. Oh, I understand perfectly now. I know about the diverted money, the lavish gifts you bought her using our savings. My voice shook with rage I could no longer contain. That money was mine, Ethan exploded. I earned it through my work, not you. What have you contributed lately besides nagging and suspicion? The accusation stung, but I stood firm. That money belonged to our family. Instead, you blew it on her without a second thought. And then you tried to gaslight me into thinking it was all in my head. Ethan glared at me. Gaslight you? I've provided for you since the day we married, given you and the kids this luxurious lifestyle out of the goodness of my heart. This is the thanks I get? The goodness of your heart? Don't make me laugh, I scoffed. You've provided nothing but deception. But now it's over. It's all here in black and white. I jabbed my finger at the photos. You have two options. Agree to an equitable divorce settlement, or I send this to your firm, your family, and every media outlet in town. Ethan's confident facade finally cracked. Fear flashed in his eyes. He raked a hand through his hair, chest heaving. You wouldn't dare, he said through gritted teeth, but uncertainty tinged his voice. I gave a cold, mirthless smile. Try me. My only concern now is getting what I'm owed after so many years of loyalty and sacrifice. Do right by me and the kids, and your reputation stays intact. Call my bluff, and I'll bring your perfect world crashing down around you. My heart pounded as we stared at each other. After an eternity, Ethan collapsed back into the chair with a heavy sigh. Fine, you win. He practically spat the words. I'll instruct my lawyer to draft a new divorce settlement, something equitable. Saying the word seemed to pain him. Relief swept through me, though I kept my expression neutral. I'm glad we could settle this like adults. I extended my hand calmly. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan shook it, his grip tight with resentment. Expect the revised paperwork soon, he bit out. Gathering the photos back into the folder, he strode toward the door without another glance at me. As soon as the door slammed shut behind him, my legs nearly gave out. I sank to the floor, dizzy with adrenaline and vindication. I'd stood my ground and emerged victorious. True, it was just one battle. The war still raged on, but I had taken definitive action to change the tides in my favor. For the first time in years, I felt empowered, in control of my future. I'd seized my power back rather than waiting helplessly for Ethan to dictate my fate, and it felt incredible. I allowed myself a moment to feel the victory, sweet and exhilarating. Then I rinsed my face, straightened my spine, and walked to the phone. I had more calls to make, arrangements to ensure the revised settlement delivered what it promised. Ethan would look for any loopholes, any way to manipulate the terms back in his favor. I could not let down my guard. But as I began dialing, a sense of hope blossomed in my chest. Today I had faced my greatest fear. Confrontation with the domineering man I'd believed held all the cards, and I'd emerged the victor. If I could do that, I could weather whatever else came next. The divorce, rebuilding a new life with my kids, all of it. I was ready. Ethan had awoken a warrior within me, and she was just getting started. I scrutinized the revised divorce settlement one final time, searching in vain for any hidden traps or loopholes. Finding nothing amiss, I signed on the dotted line with a satisfied smile. The negotiator I'd hired had more than earned his exorbitant fees. Per our agreement, I would receive 60% of the marital assets, more than enough to secure a comfortable new home and fund the kids' college accounts. Ethan would also pay a hefty monthly stipend in child and spousal support. His reputation may have survived the divorce, but his bank account certainly wouldn't. Mom, the moving truck is here. Alex called from the foyer. I nodded, steeling myself one last time before heading downstairs. The kids waited by the front door, boxes piled around them. Lila bounced excitedly on her heels. I can't wait to decorate my new room, and we can finally get a dog like you promised. Despite everything, I smiled at her enthusiasm. At least one good thing had come from this nightmare. A fresh start somewhere. Ethan's presence didn't haunt us daily. All right, let's get loaded up, I said briskly. I want to stop by the bank before heading to the new house. Alex gave me a quizzical look as he dragged boxes out front. The bank? Why? I lowered my voice, conscious of the movers hauling furniture nearby. There's something I need to take care of, for security. At the bank, I made my way straight to the office of the banker who'd helped me open my personal account weeks earlier. After quick pleasantries, I slid an envelope across the desk to him. I need to convert this to cash and deposit it into my new account. Today. The banker's eyebrows shot up at the thickness of the envelope, but he didn't question it. Of course, Miss Collins. I'll take care of this immediately. Within the hour, I had successfully funneled a sizable portion of the divorce settlement into untraceable cash. Not an excessive amount, just enough to fund the next phase of my plan, to build a new future safe from Ethan's clutches. Over the next several days, the chaos of moving fully occupied my thoughts. I explored the new neighborhood with the kids, let them excitedly decorate their rooms. At night, I sank gratefully into my own spacious bed, alone and finally able to relax. Once we settled into a comfortable routine, I turned my focus to the promise I'd made myself, establishing financial independence. I still received monthly support payments, but I never again wanted to rely solely on a man's money, not when he could so easily use it as a weapon against me. I thought back to my teaching days, memories flooded with warmth and purpose. Inspiration struck me as I drove by a vacant storefront near our new home, a perfect space for the endeavor taking shape in my mind. Several weeks later, I held a small open house to proudly unveil the new business, a children's enrichment center focused on creative arts and academic basics. I'd hired several bright, energetic teachers to handle daily lessons while I managed the business operations. On opening day, I paused to take in the rows of easels, sensory tables, and bookshelves filled with toys. The chalk menu listed dance, yoga, and drama classes. My eyes misted over. After sacrificing my own career, I was finally nurturing that same joy of learning in other children. Alex and Lila beamed as they led their friends on tours. "My mom did all this herself," Lila announced. Watching them, I knew my late nights poring over business plans had been worth it. That evening, after closing shop for the day, I toasted my staff with the nice bottle of wine I'd been saving. "Here's to new beginnings," I said proudly. Their resounding cheers filled me with hope. No matter what challenges arose next, I had reclaimed my independence and purpose. My happiness no longer hinged on someone else's whims. I still had difficult days, of course. Raising 2 teens solo wasn't easy, and I often missed adult companionship. But whenever I felt my resolve wavering, I remembered the hidden cash reserve, my emergency fund and insurance policy, guaranteeing security on my own terms. Proof that I could stand tall and provide for my family, with or without anyone's help. Hard-won freedom, the sweetest kind. I tapped my foot impatiently, watching the clock as I waited in the courthouse hallway. Any minute now, the judge would call us in to officially finalize the divorce. My lawyer, a stern woman aptly named Miss Wolfe, laid a hand on my arm. "It's almost over. Just stay calm in there." Easy for her to say. She hadn't dealt with Ethan's bullying for decades like I had. But she was right. I couldn't afford to seem too emotional or vindictive now. The door finally opened, and a clerk called us in. I entered with my head held high, refusing to even glance at Ethan. Wolfe had advised me to let her do the talking unless directly addressed by the judge. We stood as the judge took her seat. As she reviewed our paperwork, I subtly assessed the room. Ethan sat stone-faced beside his lawyer, fists clenched. His parents, who I hadn't seen in years, sat behind him looking dazed and confused by this whole messy situation. "Very well, everything seems in order," the judge said briskly, shuffling the papers into a pile. "Unless either party has any final concerns, I am ready to grant this divorce." Before I could even exhale in relief, Ethan's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, I must object. My client was coerced into an unfair settlement under duress from his wife. He agreed simply to avoid humiliating publicity, not because the terms are equitable." I gritted my teeth, fury boiling up instantly. Of course, Ethan would try one final manipulation tactic to wriggle out of his rightful obligations. Ms. Wolfe rose calmly beside me. "There is absolutely no evidence to support such an outrageous claim, Your Honor," she rebutted smoothly. "My client simply demonstrated her legal right to expose the truth of their marriage breakdown, a breakdown caused solely by Mr. Collins's own deceitful actions." The judge peered down her glasses. "Unless you have tangible proof of these coercion claims, I cannot simply override a mutually agreed-upon settlement." Ethan's lawyer spluttered indignantly, but sat back down. I shot Miss Wolfe a grateful look. Her confidence bolstered my own. "Do you have anything to add, Mrs. Collins?" the judge asked me directly. I stood tall. "No, Your Honor. The settlement is fair and equitable. I only want to finalize this divorce so we can all move on with our lives." My voice rang through the silent courtroom. Behind Ethan, his mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The judge nodded. Very well. It is the ruling of this court that the marriage be dissolved, and the settlement enacted as written. She banged her gavel decisively. Case closed. I sagged in relief as Ethan stormed out of the courtroom. It was over. I had endured the final gauntlet. Miss Wolfe clasped my hand tightly. You were phenomenal in there, she praised. Now go celebrate this new chapter. The kids were waiting eagerly by the car when I emerged from the courthouse, official divorce papers in hand. We shared a celebratory group hug right there in the parking lot. I'm so proud of you, Mom, Alex said, a catch in his voice. We both are. You really stood up to Dad's bullying. Lila nodded firmly. He tried to pull his same old crap, but not this time. You shut it down. I blinked back grateful tears. Having you two in my corner made all the difference. But this victory belongs to all of us. We picked up takeout and had an impromptu party at home, laughing together in a way we hadn't in years. I knew the pain and anger over Ethan's betrayal would take time to fully heal. But tonight we simply reveled in the triumph of breaking free. Later, after the kids went to bed, I pulled out the thick case file documenting Ethan's misdeeds. For a moment, I considered burning it, no longer needing the leverage it provided. But caution prevailed. Instead, I tucked the file safely in the back of my closet. A reminder that as much as Ethan had taken from me, I had reclaimed power over my own life in the end. The law was on my side now, our assets divided exactly as I'd fought for. But it never hurt to be overly prepared where Ethan was concerned. With that final reassurance in place, I slipped into bed feeling truly free for the first time in ages. The future stretched bright before me, filled with possibilities limited only by my own imagination. Ethan had meant to trap me in his web of lies. Instead, he had lit a fire in me to fight for myself and my children, and it was a fire that would never be extinguished again. I sipped my coffee leisurely, skimming the morning headlines. Business as usual until a familiar name jumped out at me, Ethan's law firm, emblazoned above the fold. I snatched up the paper, pulse racing. CEO steps down amid scandal, the headline screamed. My eyes frantically scanned the article. The board of Bartley & Associates announced today the resignation of senior partner Ethan Collins following revelations of his involvement with a mistress. I gasped aloud, nearly spilling my drink. There in stark print were the words I'd never expected to see published, the whole sordid tale of Ethan's infidelity laid bare. Miss Carter's photos accompanied the article in garish detail, along with leaked financial records showing the extravagant gifts showered on Ethan's mistress. Gifts bought with funds diverted from family accounts without my knowledge. I sat stunned, emotions swirling wildly. Disbelief warred with vindication and a touch of fear. I certainly hadn't leaked anything to the media. After the exhausting divorce, I just wanted to move on with my life. Had Ethan crossed someone else who decided to expose him? I supposed it hardly mattered now. The truth was out, and Ethan would face the consequences. Still reeling, I bundled the kids off to school as usual, not wanting to alarm them. I knew they would hear the news from their friends soon enough. Best to let them process it first. All day I fielded shocked phone calls from family and acquaintances. Yes, the rumors were true. Ethan had been deceitful and unfaithful. No, I had not been the one to go public. I remained dignified but honest, refusing to sugarcoat Ethan's behavior. He had made his bed. Now he could lie in it. Alone. That evening, the kids came bursting through the front door, talking loudly over one another. I held up my hands for quiet. I know you both have a lot of emotions around this news. Let's talk it through. I guided them to sit on the couch. Their indignant faces told me everything. I can't believe all our friends know Dad cheated now. Alex shook his head angrily. So humiliating. Lila's eyes blazed. I'm glad everyone knows. He's slithered out of consequences for too long. She crossed her arms. Karma finally caught up. I nodded slowly. You're right. He has avoided accountability in the past. But the truth prevailing is not always a comfort. I chose my words carefully. Your father made many mistakes, ones that hurt this family deeply. Now he'll have to live with the results of his choices. That brings justice, but we don't need to celebrate his suffering. Alex's shoulders slumped. You're right, Mom. I don't want to enjoy anyone's misery, even his. I squeezed his shoulder. However complicated my own emotions, I refused to let the kids follow Ethan's example of bitterness and pettiness. We would take the high road. In the weeks that followed, Ethan maintained radio silence with me and the kids. From news articles and old acquaintances, I pieced together bits of his new reality. His reputation lay in tatters, prestige stripped away overnight. The country club revoked his membership. Most of his clients promptly fired the firm in the scandal's wake. Even the mistress dumped him, not wanting her name dragged through the mud further. Despite everything, a small part of me ached in sympathy. Ethan was certainly reaping what he sowed, but to lose everything so suddenly would devastate anyone. I hoped someday he found a way to rebuild his integrity, away from the temptations of power. I focused on my own fulfillment, through work and time with Lila and Alex. We grew closer than ever, strengthened by weathering the storm as a team. The enrichment center thrived with a long waiting list for spots. True to my word, I never exploited Ethan's downfall or gloried in his suffering, no matter how justified it might feel. I simply looked ahead to my bright future, built through determination and hard-won independence. Karma had already secured justice for me. Now my energy went toward living well. The ultimate revenge. We sold out of spots for summer camp in less than a week this year. I beamed, doing a little dance across my office. I had to hire 2 extra instructors just to accommodate the waiting list. Alex laughed indulgently as he plopped into the chair across from me. That's amazing, Mom, but try not to work yourself into the ground, okay? I waved his concern away. Oh, please, I have plenty of energy to go around. And it was true. Running my childhood enrichment center filled me with renewed purpose every day. The business now supported my modest lifestyle completely, freeing me from reliance on anyone else. 2 years after opening the doors, I finally felt wholly independent and fulfilled. My divorce lawyer walked through those same doors now, smiling broadly as she sank into the chair beside Alex. Cora, I come bearing good news. The court has approved the final order. Ethan will no longer receive any alimony payments from you. I gasped, hands flying to my mouth in shock. Then I leapt up to embrace her. Thank you so much. I can't tell you what a relief that is, she grinned. Happy to help force that stubborn man into accepting facts. Your income now sufficiently provides for your household. He has no valid claim to your hard-earned money. After she left, Alex grabbed my shoulders, eyes shining with pride. You did it, Mom. You finally cut him off for good. I blinked back, grateful tears. We did it, you mean. I never could have gotten here without you by my side. Alex had matured into a thoughtful young man who often helped me manage the center's operations after school. While he would leave for college next year, he vowed to stay closely involved in the family business. Lila, too, found her calling, assisting with the younger kids' dance and acting classes on weekends. Watching my children thrive filled my heart to bursting. That pride sustained me as I put in long hours preparing for the summer camp season. By mid-June, the center bustled daily with the sounds of children learning and playing. Excuse me, Miss Collins? I turned to see a smartly dressed woman waiting by my office door. Yes, can I help you? My name is Jess. I work for Women's Voice magazine. She extended her hand, which I shook warily. What would a magazine want with me? Jess smiled, sensing my hesitation. I apologize for the intrusion, but I'd love to speak with you about featuring your business. Your story is really inspiring for other women. I flushed, surprised and flattered. Still, memories of the divorce coverage made me guarded about press. Sensing this, Jess nodded kindly. No pressure, but please do consider it. I'll leave my card. After she left, I stared down at the card, turning the idea over in my mind. It would be nice to highlight the center's successes. But did I really want to rehash the painful past so publicly again? That evening, I discussed it with the kids. Lila, ever the drama queen, immediately adored the idea. Are you kidding? This could be great publicity for the center, Mom, and just imagine seeing your face on magazine racks. Alex nodded thoughtfully. I get why you're hesitant, but you have nothing to hide. Maybe sharing your story could help other women in similar situations. I say go for it. Their enthusiasm was contagious. This was a chance to move beyond the victim narrative and fully own my empowerment story, to inspire women facing adversity. What did I have to lose? I invited Jess back the following week for a formal interview. We chatted over coffee in my office about my teaching background, opening the center, and yes, dissolving an unhealthy marriage to start fresh. You're so open and brave, Jess marveled, shutting off her recorder. Your strength will really resonate with readers. I blushed. It wasn't easy, believe me, but focusing on the kids helped me power through the difficult times. They gave me purpose. Jess's eyes shone. What an amazing support system. Is there any final message you'd like to share with others in your situation? I pondered it, then said resolutely, You are stronger than you know. Don't let anyone undermine your worth or make you feel trapped. Keep sight of what matters most, and fight for that fiercely. Jess squeezed my hand before departing. I exhaled slowly, drained but proud. The story was out there now, messy parts and all. Hopefully, it could help shift someone else's perspective or inspire action, just as Alex said. A few weeks later, a thick package with my name on the return address arrived. I opened it to find the upcoming issue of Women's Voice. There on the glossy cover beamed my smiling face above the headline, Cora Collins turns adversity into inspiration. Tears of pride sprang to my eyes as I clutched the magazine tightly. Whatever came next, I had reclaimed my strength, my voice, and my power. On my own terms. It was an ordinary Tuesday, or so I thought, until Daniel, my husband, walked in with an unsettling grin. I've got great news, Emily. I've decided to renovate our house with the $1 million you inherited, Daniel announced, his eyes gleaming with a mix of greed and triumph. I felt my heart skip a beat. What? How? My voice trailed off, a cocktail of shock and disbelief swirling within me. My father had passed away recently, leaving me a substantial inheritance, but I hadn't mentioned a word of it to Daniel. Sensing my confusion, Daniel leaned in closer, his grin widening. Oh, I have my ways. Your dear mother was quite helpful after a little persuasion. The revelation hit me like a freight train. Daniel had stooped to blackmailing my own mother to learn about my inheritance. Anger boiled within me, but I fought to keep my composure. How could you threaten my mother? That's low, even for you, I spat, my voice sharp with accusation. Daniel shrugged nonchalantly. It's not a big deal, Emily. Besides, it's done. I've already signed the contract for the renovation. Your little inheritance is going to turn this dull house into a palace. I stood up, my hands trembling. You had no right to do that. It's my money, not yours. But Daniel's smirk didn't waver. In marriage, what's yours is mine, sweetheart. And let's face it, you weren't going to spend it wisely anyway. I struggled to find words, my mind racing. This wasn't the man I had fallen in love with, the man who had once spoken of dreams and shared laughter over cups of coffee. This was someone else, someone consumed by greed and manipulation. I can't believe you, I whispered, feeling a profound sense of betrayal. Daniel's expression softened for a moment, but it wasn't out of remorse. Come on, Emily. It's for us, for our future. You'll see. You'll love it once it's all done. But his words fell on deaf ears. I knew then that the man I married was gone, replaced by a stranger I no longer recognized. As I looked at Daniel, a plan began to form in my mind. I wouldn't let him get away with this. Not now, not ever. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. 3 years ago, the world seemed a brighter place. I was 25, dedicated to my career at the bank, and hopeful about love. That's when I met Daniel at a dating agency. He was a salesman, a year older than me, with a charm that could light up a room. Our paths crossing like this must be fate, Daniel had said on our first date, his eyes sparkling with what I believed was genuine affection. We quickly fell into a comfortable rhythm. He was funny, attentive, and seemed to genuinely appreciate my ambitions. Emily, you're not just a career woman, you're my Wonder Woman, he would often say with a smile that warmed my heart. Within a year, we were married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, just the way we wanted. Our vows were promises of support and love, and I believed every word we said to each other. Our honeymoon phase was blissful. We would spend evenings talking about our future, about the home we would build, the places we would travel to. But slowly, and then all at once, things changed. It started with subtle comments. Must be nice to earn so much, Daniel would say with a hint of sarcasm. At first, I brushed it off as harmless banter, but the comments became more frequent, more bitter. Then came the shift in his parents' behavior. Initially, they had welcomed me with open arms. We're so lucky our son found someone as successful as you, they would say, their faces beaming with pride. But their true colors soon showed. It was during a casual dinner when his mother first made a blunt request. Emily, dear, you earn quite well. Could you lend us some money? We've been eyeing this new car. I was taken aback but tried to respond diplomatically. I'm sorry, I don't lend money to family. It's a policy of mine. Their reaction was immediate and harsh. We thought you were part of this family. What's the use of having a daughter-in-law who won't help out? His father had barked. Daniel, who had once defended me, now sat in silence, his eyes avoiding mine. It was a painful realization. The love and respect I thought we had were conditional, hinged on my financial contributions. I felt like a resource, not a family member. As these incidents grew, so did the distance between Daniel and me. The man I married, who once looked at me with admiration, now glanced my way with envy and entitlement. And amidst this turmoil, the news of my father's illness arrived, a painful twist in an already unraveling tale. The days following my father's diagnosis were a blur of hospital visits and sleepless nights. Amidst this chaos, the cracks in my marriage widened into gaping chasms. It was during one such visit to my parents' house that I realized the extent of Daniel's indifference. My mother, teary-eyed, clung to my father's hand as the doctor explained the severity of his condition. I had barely managed to hold back my own tears. Returning home that evening, I shared the grim news with Daniel. His response was a dispassionate, "That's tough. Anyway, what's for dinner?" His lack of empathy was like a slap in the face. The man who had once promised to stand by me in sickness and in health couldn't muster a shred of concern for my dying father. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's behavior grew increasingly self-centered. He began making extravagant purchases, justifying them with, "You can afford it, Emily. Why not enjoy life a bit?" Meanwhile, my father's health deteriorated. The hospital became my second home, the place where I watched the strongest man I knew fade away. The day my father passed was the day part of me died, too. I returned home from the funeral, emotionally drained, only to find Daniel lounging on our new expensive couch, eyes glued to the TV. "Your father's funeral, huh? Must have been a drag," he commented without looking away from the screen. I stood there, numb, unable to comprehend how I had ended up married to someone so callous. The grief for my father mixed with a growing loathing for the man I shared my home with. It was then that I decided I couldn't live this lie any longer. I needed to get out, to free myself from this toxic marriage. But before I could even broach the subject of divorce, Daniel dropped his bombshell about the inheritance. His knowledge of the money, gained through threats and manipulation, was the final straw. I realized then that Daniel wasn't just indifferent, he was predatory. He had been waiting, biding his time until he could sink his claws into my inheritance. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan began to take shape in my mind. If Daniel wanted a battle over the inheritance, I was ready to give him one. But it wouldn't be the battle he was expecting. I would fight, not just for my father's legacy, but for my own dignity. Daniel had underestimated me, and that was going to be his biggest mistake. The weeks following my father's funeral were a tumultuous mix of grief and seething anger. My mind was a battleground, torn between mourning and the need to confront Daniel about his deplorable actions. One evening, I decided it was time to face the issue head-on. "We need to talk about the divorce," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Daniel, lounging on his chair with a beer in hand, looked up with feigned surprise. "Divorce? Now? You really want to stress yourself more after your father's death?" His words were like venom, but I refused to let them weaken my resolve. "Yes, now. I can't pretend everything is fine between us." He scoffed, finishing his beer in one long gulp. "Fine, we'll talk later. I'm tired tonight." With that, he retreated to the bedroom, leaving me standing alone in the living room. The next day, and the day after, it was the same story. Daniel evaded every attempt I made to discuss our failing marriage. It was clear he was playing for time, perhaps hoping I would change my mind or that the issue would somehow resolve itself. But I was done waiting for Daniel to take our problems seriously. I started consulting a lawyer, preparing myself for the legal battles ahead. As I navigated the complexities of divorce proceedings, another shock came my way. A bank statement slipped under our door revealed the extent of Daniel's spending spree. He had drained our joint savings account, leaving almost nothing. I confronted him, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anger. "You've used all our savings, Daniel. How could you?" He shrugged, his expression unapologetic. "I thought you wouldn't mind. After all, you have that big inheritance coming, don't you?" It was then that I realized Daniel saw me not as his wife, but as a financial resource, a means to fund his lavish lifestyle. The man I once loved was long gone, replaced by a stranger driven by greed. Feeling betrayed and alone, I poured my energy into finalizing the divorce. I was determined to reclaim my life, to break free from the shackles of a marriage that had become a prison. As the days passed, my resolve only strengthened. I was no longer the naive woman who had fallen for Daniel's charm. I was a fighter, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And as I prepared for the final showdown with Daniel, I knew one thing for certain. I would emerge from this battle stronger and more resilient than ever. The day I confronted Daniel about the divorce and his deceit was a turning point. I had gathered all my courage, ready to face whatever came my way. "Daniel, we need to settle this once and for all. I want a divorce," I stated firmly, my voice echoing in the now barren living room, a stark reminder of his reckless spending. Daniel looked at me, his eyes cold and calculating. "Sure, let's divorce, but remember, I'm entitled to half of your inheritance." I couldn't help but smirk at his ignorance. "Actually, Daniel, inherited property is not considered communal property. You won't get a cent of my inheritance." His face contorted in anger and disbelief. "What? That can't be right. I'll get a lawyer. You'll see." But I stood my ground. "You can get 10 lawyers if you want. The law is clear, and by the way, I already have one." The following weeks were a flurry of legal documents and tense meetings, but I was determined to see it through. I would not let Daniel intimidate me any longer. Then karma made its grand entrance. Daniel's attempt to manipulate the situation backfired spectacularly. The lawyer he hired was no match for the clear-cut laws of inheritance. His face, when he realized he wouldn't get his hands on my father's legacy, was a mix of shock and fury. But I wasn't done yet. I took legal action against him for depleting our joint savings account. The court ruled in my favor, ordering him to repay every penny he had squandered. As I walked out of the courthouse, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The divorce was finalized, and I was free from Daniel's toxic grip. But the sweetest victory was yet to come. The construction company Daniel had contracted for the renovations came after him for the unpaid balance. With no inheritance to fall back on and his savings gone, Daniel was cornered. It was a fitting end for a man who could trample over others for his gain. He was left to face the consequences of his actions, a harsh lesson in greed and deception. As for me, I emerged from the ordeal stronger and more independent. I had stood up to Daniel and reclaimed my life, my dignity intact. And in that moment of triumph, I knew that no matter what life threw my way, I would always find the strength to overcome it. The final chapter of my marriage to Daniel was written in the lawyer's office, a room filled with the cold formality of legal proceedings. As I signed the divorce papers, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was closing a painful chapter of my life, but more importantly, I was opening a new one. In the days that followed, I moved out of the house we once shared. Each box I packed was not just filled with belongings, but with memories, some bitter, some sweet. It was a cathartic process, letting go of the past and looking forward to the future. With the divorce finalized, I took a bold step. I sold the family home, the place that had witnessed so much of my life's drama. The sale was quick, and the proceeds were more than enough to start anew. I found a quaint apartment in a quiet neighborhood, a place where I could heal and rebuild. My mother, having witnessed my struggles, decided to join me. Together, we created a new home, filled with love and support. As for Daniel, karma continued to follow him. The legal battles over the renovations and his financial mismanagement left him in a precarious situation. He tried reaching out to me once, a half-hearted attempt at reconciliation, but I was no longer the woman he once manipulated. I had learned a hard lesson about trust and the dangers of greed. But more importantly, I had discovered my inner strength, my ability to stand up for myself and fight for what was right. Now I spend my days working at the bank, a job I've always loved, and my evenings are filled with laughter and conversations with my mother. We often talk about my father, keeping his memory alive in our hearts. And in those quiet moments, I reflect on my journey. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for justice, it all led me to this point. I am stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Daniel's betrayal was a harsh blow, but it taught me the importance of self-respect and the value of standing up for oneself. I emerged from that storm not as a victim, but as a survivor, ready to face whatever life has in store for me with courage and grace. And so as I turn the page to this new chapter in my life, I do so with hope and a heart full of possibilities. For I know now that no matter how dark the night, the dawn always brings new light. Jack, my husband of 10 years, was pacing back and forth, his phone pressed against his ear. I sipped my coffee, trying to drown out his voice, but his next words pierced through the calm. "Yeah, Angela and Mark can move in next week. No worries, I'll sort everything out," Jack said, a casual tone in his voice, as if he were planning a weekend barbecue, not upending our lives. I nearly choked on my coffee. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and anger. Jack ended the call and turned to me with a shrug. "Angela's husband lost his job. They're getting kicked out of their company apartment. Told them they could stay here for a while." Without even discussing it with me, I felt my temper rising. This wasn't just any decision. It was one that would invade our private space, our sanctuary. Jack scoffed. "Come on, Emily. They're family. What's there to discuss?" I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is our home, Jack. Our decisions should be mutual. And where exactly do you plan on putting them in our 3-bedroom house? Michael's room?" He waved his hand dismissively. "We'll figure it out, probably the study. You barely use it anyway." I couldn't believe his audacity. "And what about the mortgage, the bills? Are they going to contribute to that?" Jack laughed, a sound that once brought me joy but now grated on my nerves. "You know Angela and Mark are in a tight spot. We can handle it for a while." I felt a surge of anger. "We? You mean me, don't you? You barely bring in any income with your odd jobs. I'm the one paying for everything." He rolled his eyes. "Here we go again. Always about money with you, isn't it, Emily?" I clenched my fists, trying to control the trembling in my voice. "It's about respect, Jack. About partnership. I can't keep living like this, making all the sacrifices while you make decisions on a whim." Jack's expression hardened. "You're overreacting. It's just for a while. Angela's always been there for me, and now it's my turn to help her out." I shook my head, a mix of sadness and frustration washing over me. "And what about me, Jack? When do my feelings matter?" He didn't answer, just grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. As he left, I felt a resolve growing within me. This was the tipping point, the moment where I could no longer ignore the imbalance in our relationship. It was time for a change, time for me to stand up for myself. I thought about our son Michael, only 8 years old, witnessing this constant tension. I couldn't let him grow up thinking this was normal, that this was what marriage looked like. As I cleared the breakfast dishes, my mind raced with plans. I needed to talk to someone, get advice, maybe my parents or a lawyer. One thing was clear. I couldn't let Jack and his sister bulldoze over my life any longer. I looked around the house, our home filled with memories both sweet and sour. It was time to make some tough decisions, but for the first time in a long time I felt a spark of hope. The thought of standing up to Jack, of reclaiming my life, was terrifying yet exhilarating. As the morning sun rose higher, casting light on the dust particles dancing in the air, I knew one thing for sure. Change was coming, and I was ready to embrace it. The evening was quiet, too quiet. I sat in the living room, the TV humming in the background, but my mind was elsewhere, lost in the echoes of the past. 10 years ago, my world had crumbled. My fiancé had left me at the altar, a public humiliation that had left me shattered. It was during this vulnerable time that I met Jack, my charming coworker who offered a shoulder to cry on. As I reminisced, I couldn't help but see the stark contrast between the man I married and the man sitting in our living room now, absorbed in his phone, oblivious to the turmoil he'd caused. The memory of our happier times seemed like a distant dream, overshadowed by Jack's increasing arrogance and insensitivity. I broke the silence. "Jack, we need to talk about Angela moving in." He didn't even look up. "What's there to talk about? I already told you they're staying in the study." I felt a wave of frustration. "It's not just about the space, Jack. It's about us, our marriage. Do you even remember how we started? How you were there for me when I was at my lowest?" Jack finally glanced up, his expression a mix of annoyance and amusement. "Oh, come on, Emily. You're not going to bring up that old story, are you? I was the hero who saved you from becoming an old maid." His words stung, a painful reminder of how he often belittled my feelings. "Is that what you think? That you did me a favor by marrying me?" He shrugged. "Well, isn't it true? I mean, look at you. You were a mess back then. I gave you stability, a family. You should be grateful." I felt a burning anger rising within me. Grateful for being treated like an afterthought in my own home? For having to bear the financial burden while you make decisions without me? Jack stood up, his voice rising. "You're always so dramatic. It's just my sister and her husband. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" I stood my ground. "Because it is a big deal, Jack. It's about respect, something you clearly have none of." He scoffed. "Respect? Look who's talking. You think you're better than me just because you earn more?" I shook my head, disbelief washing over me. "This isn't about money, Jack. It's about us, our marriage. But you just don't get it, do you?" Jack's face hardened. "You know what? I don't have time for this nonsense. I'm going out." As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a deep sense of loneliness enveloping me. I thought of Michael, asleep in his room, blissfully unaware of the growing rift between his parents. I wondered what the future held for us, for this broken family we had become. The night grew deeper, and the house felt emptier than ever. I knew that something had to change, and soon. The weight of the decision lay heavy on my heart, but I knew I couldn't let Jack continue to walk over me. It was time to take a stand for myself and for Michael. The following evening, the tension in our house was palpable. Jack and I had barely spoken since our argument. He was sprawled on the couch, flipping through channels, while I prepared dinner in silence. The sound of the front door opening announced Angela's arrival, her presence like a storm cloud entering our already gloomy home. "Emily, darling, I brought some of my things over. Where should I put them?" Angela breezed into the kitchen, her voice overly sweet. I clenched my jaw, trying to maintain my composure. "In the study, I guess. That's where you'll be staying." Angela surveyed the room, her nose wrinkling in disapproval. "Oh, this won't do at all. It's so cramped. Jack, couldn't we use Michael's room instead? He can bunk with you guys, can't he?" I was aghast. Absolutely not. Michael's room is his space, and it's staying that way. Jack, who had been silently watching TV, chimed in without looking away from the screen. "Let's not fuss about it now, Angela. Emily's made up her mind." Angela pouted, her gaze shifting between Jack and me. "Fine, but Emily, dear, you really should consider redecorating. This place could use a woman's touch." I bit back a sharp retort, feeling my frustration mount. "Dinner's almost ready. Why don't you set the table?" As we sat down to eat, Angela's critical eye roamed over the dishes I had prepared. "Pork chops and clams, Emily. An unusual combination. I would have gone for something lighter. Maybe a salad?" Jack nodded in agreement. "Yeah, Emily, you really should try mixing things up a bit. Angela's got a point." I swallowed hard, my appetite waning. I thought it would be a nice change, but I'll keep that in mind for next time. Angela smirked, picking at her food. "It's a bit overcooked too, don't you think? But don't worry, I'm sure you'll improve with practice." The meal passed in strained silence, with Angela's occasional barbed comments and Jack's disinterested nods. I cleared the table, feeling a mixture of anger and helplessness. Later that night, as I lay in bed, Jack's words echoed in my mind. "You should be grateful." His lack of support, his dismissal of my feelings, it was all becoming too much to bear. I thought about Michael, about the kind of environment I wanted for him. My decision was becoming clearer with each passing moment. I needed to get out, to free myself and Michael from this toxic situation. The thought of leaving was terrifying, but the thought of staying was even worse. I needed to be strong, not just for myself, but for my son. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was sure. I couldn't let Jack and Angela continue to control my life. The next morning, I decided it was time for action. After dropping Michael off at school, I made a call to my parents. I needed allies, and I knew they would stand by me. "Mom, it's Emily. I need to talk to you about something important," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As I explained the situation, my mother's shock turned into anger. "Emily, you can't let Jack walk all over you like this. And Angela, moving into your house without even asking? It's outrageous." I felt a surge of determination. I know, Mom. That's why I've decided to leave Jack. I can't do this anymore. My mother was quick to offer support. You and Michael are welcome to stay with us for as long as you need. Your father and I will help you with whatever you need. Relief washed over me. Thank you, Mom. I'll start packing our things. When I returned home, Jack was in the living room, once again absorbed in his phone. Angela was nowhere to be seen. It was now or never. Jack, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. He glanced up, annoyance flickering in his eyes. What now, Emily? I took a deep breath. I'm leaving you, Jack. Michael and I are moving out. Jack's reaction was immediate and explosive. You're what? You can't just take Michael and leave. I stood my ground. I can, and I will. I refuse to live in a house where I'm not respected, where my opinions don't matter. Jack rose from the couch, his face red with anger. You think you can just walk out and everything will be fine? Think about Michael. I am thinking about Michael, I retorted. I'm thinking about the kind of environment he's growing up in. I'm doing this for him as much as for myself. Jack's voice grew louder, more desperate. You're being selfish, Emily. You can't just tear our family apart like this. I shook my head, sadness mingling with resolve. No, Jack. You tore our family apart the moment you stopped treating me as your equal, the moment you let Angela dictate our lives. Jack's anger shifted to bargaining. We can work this out, Emily. Don't do this. Think about what you're doing. But my mind was made up. I have thought about it, Jack, and my decision is final. Michael and I deserve better. With those final words, I walked away from Jack, from the life we had built together. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, but also the most liberating. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I was taking control of my life, breaking free from the chains of a loveless marriage. It was time to start anew, for Michael and for myself. The days following my decision to leave Jack were a whirlwind. With the support of my parents, Michael and I moved into their home, a safe haven amidst the chaos. I started the divorce proceedings, determined to break free from the shackles of my marriage. However, the real storm was yet to come. One evening, as I was preparing dinner at my parents' house, my phone buzzed. It was the school principal. My heart sank. Was something wrong with Michael? Mrs. Thompson, there's been an incident involving your sister-in-law, Angela, the principal said, her voice tense. What happened? I asked, panic rising in my voice. Angela attempted to take Michael from the school grounds without permission. She caused quite a scene, insisting she had a right to see him. I felt a cold fury replace my initial fear. Is Michael all right? He's fine, but understandably shaken. We've had to call the police. The next day, the full story unfolded. Angela, in her delusion, had tried to play the role of a doting aunt, but her actions were alarming and intrusive. She'd gone as far as to attempt to take Michael from school, claiming she was his rightful guardian in my absence. The incident was the last straw. It not only exposed Angela's disturbing behavior, but also highlighted Jack's inability to keep his sister in check. My resolve to protect Michael and myself was stronger than ever. The backlash for Angela was immediate. Her reputation, once that of a doting sister and aunt, was now tainted with the brush of instability and obsession. The community's perception of her changed overnight. Whispers and stares followed her wherever she went. As for Jack, he was furious when he found out I had informed the school and authorities about Angela's behavior. He accused me of overreacting, of trying to tarnish his sister's image. You've blown this way out of proportion, Emily. Angela was just being affectionate, Jack argued over the phone. Affectionate? She tried to take our son out of school without my permission. That's not affection, Jack. That's interference, and it's dangerous, I shot back, my patience wearing thin. Jack's frustration was evident. You're trying to turn everyone against us, against my sister. You always had it in for her. No, Jack. I'm protecting our son. You and Angela have crossed a line. This isn't about revenge, it's about safety and boundaries, I stated firmly. The divorce proceedings took on a new urgency after the incident. I was more determined than ever to ensure that Michael and I were safe from the toxic environment Jack and Angela had created. The sense of empowerment I felt was new and invigorating. I was no longer the woman who would bow down to Jack's whims. I was fighting back, standing up for what was right for me and my son. As I watched Michael play in my parents' garden, A sense of peace settled over me. The path ahead would be challenging, but I knew we were on the right track. We were breaking free from the past, ready to embrace a future filled with hope and freedom. The weeks following Angela's alarming incident were tumultuous. As the divorce proceedings progressed, I discovered a strength within me I never knew existed. But it wasn't until I received a call from Jack that I realized the extent of the change I had initiated. "I can't believe you've done this, Emily." Jack's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. "You've ruined everything." I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "I haven't ruined anything, Jack. I've just stopped allowing you and Angela to control my life." Jack scoffed. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Taking Michael, dragging Angela's name through the mud. You've turned my life upside down." "It was never my intention to turn your life upside down. It was to protect our son and myself from a toxic environment," I replied, my voice firm. Jack's tone became spiteful. "You'll pay for this, Emily. I'll make sure you don't get a dime in the divorce, and I'll fight for custody of Michael." His threats no longer scared me. "You can try, Jack, but I have the truth on my side, and the law." The final court hearing was a blur. Jack's attempts to paint me as the villain fell flat. The judge saw through his and Angela's actions. Custody of Michael was granted to me, along with a fair settlement. Jack was ordered to pay child support. After the hearing, I saw Angela outside the courthouse. She looked defeated, a shadow of the overbearing woman she once was. Our eyes met, but I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a sense of closure. "Emily," she started, but I held up my hand. "There's nothing left to say, Angela. I wish you well, but from now on, our paths don't cross." Turning away, I walked towards my new life. Michael was waiting for me, his smile a beacon of hope. The months that followed brought peace and stability. Jack, burdened by his responsibilities and his reputation tarnished, struggled to maintain his facade. Angela retreated from our lives, her influence waning. As for me, I thrived. My job, my son, my freedom, they were my focus. Michael adjusted well, his resilience a testament to the love and support surrounding him. One evening, as I tucked him into bed, Michael looked up at me, his eyes bright. "Mom, I'm happy here, with you, Grandma, and Grandpa." I kissed his forehead, a tear escaping my eye. "I am too, honey. I am too." As I stepped out of his room, I took a moment to reflect. The journey had been difficult, filled with pain and confrontation, but it had led us here, to a place of love and safety. I realized then that my story wasn't just about drama and revenge. It was about finding my voice, standing up for myself and my son. It was a story of liberation, of breaking free from the chains of a toxic relationship. As I turned off the lights, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. For my supportive parents, for Michael, for the strength I had found within myself. I had emerged from the shadows of my past, ready to embrace the light of a new dawn.